It all starts with the announcement of a train arriving at the subway station. The train car moves along the dark tracks, while warnings alert passengers about the doors. A young man in a blue jacket waits patiently in front of the glass doors. Just then, someone calls the young man by the name Jungkook and suggests they sit down. He reunites with his family on the subway after finishing yet another day of deliveries. The three of them sit together and chat about fond memories from the past. With a nostalgic look, the young man regrets not having seen his old father's reaction, but in truth, he is all alone, and it was all just memories of his family. In his mind, he can still hear the voice of a little boy calling for his mother. The woman scolds her son and warns him that he should not run in public places. Jungkook just watches the imaginary scene, while the mother gives the boy stern talking to. In his vision, the train finally exits the dark tunnel and is bathed in sunlight. Back in reality, the young man finds himself alone on the bench of that abandoned train car. He looks at the keychain in his hand and realizes he was not even on a real subway. The young man lifts the object and confesses that he was just imagining the trip. As he lowers his hand, he finds a human skeleton leaning against the wall. That gloomy place could not even be called a home for a living person. Jungkook looks around with a serious expression and concludes what the environment really is. He observes the landscape through the window of a moss-covered, ruined building. The world outside is an apocalyptic scene, destroyed by immense black pillars. He remembers his father's stories about what the world was like 40 years ago. Back then, people walked through the streets in a safe and peaceful environment. However, that peace ended suddenly when a tragedy appeared in the skies. Gigantic, mysterious black pillars fell from the clouds at high speed. No one knew where those structures came from as they rained down upon the city. Civilians just watched in terror as the structures collided with the ground. The massive impact caused unprecedented destruction and spread chaos. Jungkook keeps a fixed gaze while reflecting on the horrors of the event. That catastrophe caused the end of the world and left only a few survivors. The young man crouches down and thinks about how hard it was to believe such absurd stories. Yet the story he thought was the biggest lie involved the existence of subways. He clenches his fist, finding the idea of strangers squeezing into a train car insane. In his view, staying vulnerable near other people was asking to meet an early end. He walks through the destroyed location and concludes that all that talk of peace was a lie. Jungkook is convinced that anyone who talks about peace is a con artist. Despite his mistrust, he still holds a deep desire to ride a subway. He imagines the incredible feeling of traveling at high speed through the tunnels. Suddenly, his thoughts are interrupted by the sound of footsteps. The young man reacts quickly and hides behind a wall to avoid being seen. He analyzes the rhythm of the footsteps and deduces that two soldiers are walking nearby. Observing from above, he notes that the armed duo is too small to be a squad. The protagonist decides that the best option is to avoid a fight and let them pass. However, one of the armed men suddenly stops, as if he noticed something suspicious. The soldier signals to stop, and Jungkook realizes his trail has been discovered. With no other choice, the young man sighs in frustration, knowing he will have to fight. The soldiers point their weapons into the darkness and demand to know who is hiding. One of the soldiers asks his companion to stay calm as they try to analyze the situation. Jungkook steps out from his hiding spot, and the soldiers notice his mail carrier uniform. The young man replies that he finished his deliveries and is now carrying an airstrike warning. With a cold, calculating look, he mentally prepares himself to act next. The masked soldier comments that the fighting must have been brutal for only the two of them to survive. Jungkook turns calmly and asks if the two soldiers are hungry. He reveals that he has some food left over, surprising the armed men. The protagonist smiles confidently and asks if they have anything to trade for food. The desperate soldier begins to search his pockets and offers bandages and antibiotics. He then looks at the mail carrier and asks what exactly the young man wants wants in return. Without hesitating, the young man replies that he wants ammunition. The soldier is completely confused by the mail carrier's unusual request. With a provocative smile, the young man just repeats that he wants bullets as payment. The soldier warns that their ammunition is specific, but Jungkook says he won't be using it. He explains that ammunition is light and valuable, making it the perfect currency for a mail carrier. The man insists on trading for medicine, but the protagonist refuses and demands only the bullets. The other soldier intervenes and states that they also need to conserve their armament. Upon hearing the refusal, the young man just agrees and sticks his hand into his messenger bag. He pulls out a bottle of water and food, promising to give it all for a single bullet. The young man keeps his offer firm and guarantees he only wants one round in return. He even offers a new lighter as a bonus in questions, if giving up one bullet is really that difficult. The soldier in dark glasses watches him in total silence, reflecting on the proposal. Jungkook crouches down calmly and continues staring at the two armed soldiers. With a dark smile on his face, the mail carrier suggests a new possibility for their refusal. His gaze becomes sharp as he analyzes the true situation of that doe. He deduces out loud that their weapons are completely out of ammunition. The suspicion is confirmed when one of the men pulls the trigger and the rifle just clicks. Furious, the soldier lunges with the empty weapon and tries to strike the young man with the butt of the rifle. The protagonist blocks the attack, smiling, and ironically asks why they are fighting. The soldier curses the young man and reveals that they are already in trouble and cannot return to base. The young man adjusts his hair nonchalantly and focuses on the information that they cannot return. He concludes that the duo did not get separated from the troop, but rather deserted their own squad. With a threatening expression, the mail carrier states that they are just miserable thieves. The soldier loses patience and lunges again to crush the protagonist's head. The young man dodges the attack with ease and says that this attitude only proves his theory. In a quick movement, Jungkook lands a brutal knee strike to his opponent's face. The impact of the blow is so strong that it shatters the lens of the enemy's gas mask. Taking advantage of the opening, the other soldier pulls a knife and tries to stab him in the back. The blade cuts through the air in a fast and deadly attack against the protagonist's back. Jungkook leans backward, escaping the cut that was aimed directly at his throat. The armed man widens his eyes under his glasses, shocked by the boy's agility. Still in the middle of the dodge, the mail carrier provokes him by saying his movement was too wide. Using the momentum, the young man performs an acrobatic jump and kicks his attacker's arm. The soldier retreats, holding his injured arm, and yells in fury for being humiliated by a messenger. Tired of being underestimated, Jungkook watches the soldier advance with the knife once more. The attacker tries to land another blow, but the young man uses his own arm to block the knife. Sparks fly when the enemy blade collides with a hidden metal surface. Shock takes over the soldier as he realizes his lethal attack was easily stopped. Without wasting time, the protagonist clenches his fists and prepares a stunning counterattack. He steps forward and launches a powerful punch, while joking about being treated unfairly. The blow lands square and throws the soldier violently against the concrete wall. Fallen on the floor, the man finally notices the mysterious equipment on the mail carrier's arm. The torn sleeve reveals an advanced military shield, and the soldier accuses him of stealing it. Ignoring the accusation, the young man just sighs, irritated at having had his uniform torn. The defeated soldier warns that the boy will be executed by the government if he is caught with that equipment. Ignoring the warning, Jungkook grabs a weapon from his jacket and uses it as an example for his answer. The protagonist displays the military pistol he carries, surprising the fallen deserters. The soldier widens his eyes in shock as he recognizes the weapon as a hunter's pistol. Confused and scared, the man on the floor questions who the heck that boy in front of him is. With a provocative smile, the young man replies that he is just a simple, humble mail carrier. He looks at the torn fabric of his uniform, lamenting the scolding he will get at the base. The young man straightens his damaged jacket while wondering if he should try to soothe a tear. Despite the damage, he stretches, relieved at having managed to get enough for the repair. With the situation resolved, the messenger finally regains his focus and decides to continue his journey. There are only 3 hours left until the air strike, and he walks toward the ruins of the city. Upon arriving at a huge containment wall, he is stopped by the shout of local guards. 2 armed watchmen stare at the intruder from above and demand that he not take another step. One of them is confused to see the messenger, as he had not received any delivery notice. Without showing any rush, Jungkook just lifts an official document sealed by the government. Both sentinels are startled to see the paper and immediately realize the gravity of the situation. The boy confirms that it is an airstrike warning and alerts them that less than 3 hours remain. The watchmen exchange confused looks. Since a mail carrier had never delivered that type of alert before, they conclude in panic that the boy's presence indicates the imminent fall of a gigantic pillar. Impatient with the delay, the messenger pulls a device from his bag, asking about the alarm. The watchman orders them to call the captain in a hurry, while the military device glows red. The sound of gears echoes through the environment, while the heavy metal gate rises slowly. With the passage cleared, the watchman in the cape invites the mail carrier to enter the settlement. Jungkook enters the facilities, being escorted by the guard while the device still glows. The boy walks in silence and lifts his gaze to observe the ceiling of the shelter in detail. He is impressed to see an immense, intact steel structure supporting the entire base. The alarm goes off throughout the settlement, leaving the residents desperate in the face of danger. Amidst the chaos, a little girl refuses to flee and states courageously that she will stay. The mail carrier hears the girl's words and watches her with an indecipherable expression on his face. The watchman interrupts the young man's thoughts by guiding him to the great captain of the base. Jungkook narrows his eyes, analyzing the leader to understand exactly who he is dealing with. The captain is a robust and imposing man, requiring extra care in this first contact. The protagonist remembers the golden rule for messengers about respecting the customs of each base. Without vehicles or internet, mail carriers became the only reliable link in this broken world. Extreme isolation caused each settlement to create its own fanatical beliefs. As a precaution, the boy stays silent, waiting patiently for the leader to speak first. The tense wait ends when the captain's silhouette extends a hand and finally calls out to the messenger. Surprising the young man, the big guy acts in a friendly manner and invites him for a drink. They go to a reserved bar where the captain questions if a black pillar will really fall there. Jungkook confirms the imminent tragedy and warns that there are only 2 hours left according to his calculations. The leader stares at the complex data on the paper, admitting he cannot understand those numbers. When asked if the shelter will hold, the boy looks away and says he is just a mail carrier. The man approaches and demands an honest answer, but the messenger repeats that he knows nothing. The watchman loses patience and orders the boy to leave, but the captain intervenes to calm things down. With his eyes closed, the protagonist remembers his second big rule: never interfere. He crouches to rummage through his bag, warning that he still needs to finish his real job. The giant stands up, curious about the pending service, and the young man answers mysteriously. The messenger places a technological device on the floor designed to measure the impact of the pillars. He explains that headquarters uses this exact data to cross-reference with old government predictions. With a serious countenance, he reveals the specialist's theory that the pillars don't just fall. The young man explains that the pillars act like living organisms and land exactly on the marked target, ignoring any roof. The messenger turns calmly and prepares to deliver his final verdict. He warns the leader that there is a little less than 2 hours left and asks what they will do. Outside, the boy walks through the base, noting the agitation that an outsider always causes. Residents surround the mail carrier in desperation, trying to offer all kinds of things for trade. To push the crowd away, the protagonist announces in a loud and clear voice that he only accepts ammunition. As soon as they hear the absurd demand, all the survivors move away immediately. At that moment, someone calls him, warning that they have no ammunition to offer. He turns around and sees a worn-out grenade being extended toward him as payment. The base captain questions why he would accept an explosive that might not even work. Analyzing the item with confidence, the mail carrier guarantees that the explosive will definitely work. The messenger then asks why the leader hasn't fled yet, and he says he trusts the base's roof. With a gentle smile on his face, the giant takes the opportunity to ask the boy for a favor. Suddenly, the girl who refused to flee appears happily and introduces herself as Kungi. Without patience for her excitement, the messenger just pushes the girl's face away. The protagonist casts a confused look at the captain, wanting to know what all that means. The leader lies shamelessly, saying that she has an urgent letter and needs to go along to headquarters. Jungkook realizes right away that the young girl is just trying to make up an excuse to follow him. He orders the girl to disappear, saying the only thing that follows him is his own shadow. Irritated by the response, the girl turns on a flashlight and focuses the light directly on his shadow. The boy gets worked up over the wasted battery and totally refuses her request for an escort. Seeing that the plan didn't work, the captain decides to appeal and offers a full rifle magazine. The giant sighs, lamenting losing his ammunition while calling the young girl an idiot. Jungkook finds the situation strange, since that place didn't seem rich enough to give bullets to a child. Upon analyzing the object closely, he notes that it is high-quality military ammunition. The mail carrier's gaze darkens upon finally understanding the true intentions behind the deal. He curses the leader in his thoughts, while the big guy pets the girl's head. The young man says the bullets are worth the delivery, and suggests that the captain himself take the girl to headquarters. With a melancholic smile, the leader replies that he cannot abandon the base, because it is their home. The big guy states that he will stay to protect the shelter, but will not let the girl take that risk. The protagonist watches the man's sacrifice and returns to thinking about the strength of that roof. He turns his back on the captain and murmurs, mysteriously, that it is always possible to rebuild. With the agreement sealed, the mail carrier tells the girl to follow him, and the two leave the settlement together, walking through the ruins. She asks innocently if the base's roof will be able to stop the attack. The boy gives a resounding no and leaves the girl in shock for not having warned the leader beforehand. Jungkook justifies his cold decision by saying he had two big reasons for staying silent. The first reason was that people willing to perish in a place never change their minds. He looks at the thundering clouds and reflects melancholically on his second justification. Deep down, he still believes in the slim chance of them surviving, just as he himself survived. The sky above the base glows in an intense red, announcing that the black pillar is about to fall. Meanwhile, in the settlement's bar, the drink glass shakes with the strong vibration of the air. The captain drinks quietly and guarantees the guard that the old roof will protect them once more. The masked sentinel accepts his fate and also raises a glass to join his leader. The guard asks if the messenger said anything else before leaving, and the giant hesitates. The captain remembers the boy's last words, while a look of understanding appears on his face. In his mind, he hears the mail carrier again, saying they can always rebuild the place. Holding the glass firmly, he concludes that only the young man knew the true weight of those words. The masked man breaks the tense mood by asking if the leader wouldn't have some beef jerky left. The giant smiles sadly and replies that all the meat he had has already been handed out. Far away, Kungi walks quietly, chewing the last piece of meat from her old home. The girl compares her bag to a magic sack and offers a bit of her meat to the messenger. The young man just refuses the offer and walks thoughtfully with his hands in his jacket pockets. He analyzes the magazine he received, noting that at least one of the 30 original bullets is missing. The boy knows the captain would never remove a round before handing the weapon to the child. The memory of the leader thanking him for keeping his promise finally makes sense. Sitting on the floor, the girl confesses that she thought he would just take the ammunition and abandon her. The mail carrier replies coldly that there's no such thing, since she is the one following him of her own accord. Despite the distant response, Kyungi insists that she wants to thank him properly. With a radiant smile on her face, the little girl gives the protagonist the middle finger. Jungkook forces an irritated smile and asks what the heck that gesture means. The girl explains that in her settlement that means gratitude, making the guy sigh. Exhausted, she repeats her name proudly, but he ignores her and just calls her kid. The young man warns her that she is now in the outside world and needs to follow the rules of the outside to avoid future problems. He holds the girl's little hand to teach her the right way. The messenger shapes the girl's hand into a thumbs up sign and tells her to always use that gesture. Suddenly, an overwhelming boom echoes through the skies, leaving the young girl completely scared. The protagonist looks up calmly and warns that the waiting time is finally over. Lightning cuts through the dark clouds, while the sound of the apocalypse draws ever closer. He tells the girl to cover her ears well, and she obeys, hiding under a cloak. While waiting for the impact, the guy remembers old stories about the silent fury of the heavens. He tells her about the pillars piercing the earth, and the girl asks what he is talking about. The messenger explains that these structures are to blame for humanity never having recovered. Everything indicates that they possess intelligence to destroy only important facilities. The only safe places would be the main headquarters and the underground shelters called Geofront. Before the girl can understand the explanation, Jungkook warns that the fall has begun. A blinding flash appears on the horizon, announcing the arrival of the terrible catastrophe. The colossal black pillar hits the city head-on, causing a wave of massive destruction. The force of the impact sweeps the place away completely, crushing the old buildings in seconds. The protagonist crouches behind the wall to protect himself from the winds and debris. Watching the dust settle, he laments the bad luck of the child's old settlement. The guy contemplates the colossal size of that structure and comments that not all pillars are like that. He reveals that his original plan was to go back there just to retrieve the measurement device. Since equipment with a communication core is precious, he wanted to fetch it back. Seeing the total destruction, he warns the girl that the work is finished and they can head to headquarters. The mail carrier stops walking and asks what she's doing upon seeing her kneeling on the ground. Kang-yi stares at the horizon with the mask on her face, suffering in silence for losing her home. The boy just turns his back and tells her to follow him, without offering a single word of comfort. The duo advances along a completely potholed road, surrounded by blocks of concrete. They walk side by side through the silent ruins, without exchanging a single word. Tears stream down the young girl's face, while she tries to contain the pain of her loss. Jungkook suddenly stops his steps and makes the girl almost bump into his back. With eyes still filled with tears, she calls him confused, wanting to know the reason for the pause. The guy keeps his gaze fixed on the ruins and states that the pillars are a great disaster. He murmurs softly that if there is at least one good thing about these tragedies. The girl's big eyes shine intensely as she contemplates the revealed sky. The messenger points out that the fall of the pillar clears the clouds and allows one to see the stars perfectly. He crouches down to her height and tries to show that things are not always just bad. The girl quickly understands the attitude and asks if he is trying to comfort her. Visibly embarrassed, the guy plays it off by saying that crying drains a lot of energy. The messenger's clumsy words finally bring a sincere smile to Kyung-ee's face. Kang-gi asks the reason for him doing this job, and the guy replies that it is just to survive. The girl admires the starry sky and asks which correspondence is so important anyway. Irritated by the questions, the messenger decides to show something special to the child. He lifts his hand and swings the little train keychain in front of the girl's face. With a nostalgic smile, the protagonist asks if she has ever heard of a subway. Kang-yi analyzes the miniature with confusion, finding the object too small to use. The young man closes his eyes and asks her to try to imagine the grandeur of the original transport. He describes a fast train car capable of carrying hundreds of people underground. The girl laughs at the story, thinking the messenger is much more naive than he appears. The mail carrier accepts the provocation, but suddenly questions the girl's secret. Jungkook stares at her seriously and states that she hid a bullet from the captain's magazine. He guarantees he doesn't care enough to steal the ammunition hidden by the child. However, the girl confesses nervously that she ended up swallowing the whole bullet. Shocked by the revelation, the guy questions the reason for this madness, and she apologizes. The protagonist sighs exasperated, saying that children eat anything, but this is too much. He extends his hand to her with a serious expression and decides to teach one more lesson. The young man says that the next time she feels hungry, all she has to do is ask, and he will share his food. The little girl stares at him, surprised by his kind attitude, and softly calls him messenger. In a quick movement, Jungkook pulls the girl and hides her behind his own body. He demands that she stay in total silence and not move a single muscle from now on. Hidden, he explains that the collapse of the world was not caused just by the pillars. Dark monsters emerge from the ruins, and the boy warns that there may be more of them nearby. To avoid confusion, the mail carrier draws his knife and advances stealthily against the beasts. He approaches in complete silence, without making any noise as he steps on the concrete floor. The monster, with a glowing eye on its face, does not notice the enemy's rapid approach. Suddenly, the protagonist's eyes widen upon noticing something completely unexpected. Kani disobeys the order and aims with her rifle, firing against the beasts. The flash of the shot illuminates the darkness, while the bullet pierces the air at high speed. Jungkook despairs upon seeing the child shooting and ruining the entire stealth strategy. The shot hits the monster squarely, but the noise ends up calling the attention of the rest of the pack. The guy finally understands that she didn't swallow anything and had the ammunition ready the whole time. Gritting his teeth, the mail carrier curses her as an idiot for causing such a huge mess. Attracted by the boom, the dark beasts advance furiously against the messenger. Using his blade, he cuts the neck of one of the creatures in a lethal and precise movement. Without time to breathe, the young man yells that there is one more monster approaching. The immense creature stands menacingly, like a giant shadow before the fragile girl. The protagonist jumps heroically and stabs the glowing eye of the frightening beast. But the victory lasts little, and the boy widens his eyes upon noticing a terrible wound. The monster reacts violently and hits them both, throwing the child and the messenger far away. The little girl spits blood upon being brutally thrown backward after the lethal blow. Desperate, the young man stands up and runs to the child fallen amidst the broken concrete. He hugs her and laments not having been fast enough with just a simple knife. Furious, he asks why she lied about the bullet, running such an absurd risk. Bleeding, the girl smiles and says she learned to always keep a trick up her sleeve to survive. The guy stares at the injured young girl with wide, blue eyes filled with remorse. A bright energy envelopes the boy's hand as he hovers over the child's body. In his vision, the mysterious system calculates that the chances of survival are minimal. The mail carrier evaluates the options, fearing the shot will attract powerful enemies with a core. Frustrated, he murmurs that those idiot numbers don't mean absolutely anything. With a determined look, Jungkook decides to ignore logic and save the girl's life. The girl bleeds intensely and asks if she can ask the messenger for one last favor. With a trembling hand, she extends a blood-stained envelope, remembering his words. The guy holds the blood-stained letter while the girl asks him to deliver it. The sender of the envelope shows the name Kyungi and the address of her old home. Jungkook widens his eyes upon noticing that the recipient is in an unreachable place. She begs, crying, and says that the delivery is something worth risking one's life for. The mail carrier curses upon realizing that another group of monsters has already arrived at the location. The girl suddenly asks if he still keeps the item he traded at the settlement. With a melancholic smile, she asks him to consider that item as the payment. The dark beasts get closer and closer, ready to devour both of them. Fallen on the floor, the young girl calls out to the protagonist one last time platform amidst the darkness. Several of those terrifying creatures surround the location, staring at their prey. Kamungi reveals the grenade and warns that she will use the explosive to attract their attention. Even gravely injured, she raises her arm courageously, holding the weapon. The weak voice of the little girl echoes through the silent ruins, asking for one last favor. She fully trusts that the messenger will be able to complete her final delivery. With tears in her eyes, the girl smiles sweetly and thanks him for everything he did. Jungkook widens his eyes, completely shocked by the child's imminent sacrifice. Without hesitating, the little young girl pulls the grenade pin to fulfill her sad destiny. A blinding glow appears in the middle of the dark beasts, illuminating the entire area. The explosion completely destroys the group of monsters and scatters debris through the air. Flames consume the bodies of the creatures that were annihilated by the explosion. However, a larger and more resistant beast still manages to survive the lethal impact. Suddenly, the protagonist's foot crushes the beast's head without showing any pity. The guy collects a glowing core, confirming that the creature was very special. He turns to the ruins, observing the starry sky in total and melancholic silence. With a heavy heart, the male carrier admits that he won't be able to sleep peacefully for a long time. The scene changes to a colossal futuristic facility in the middle of the desolate landscape. An immense dark tower rises majestically, representing the government's new complex. Jungkook waits for the elevator with a tired expression after returning from his long mission. He is received happily by Director Bae, who asks about his return to work. The man notes the guy's terrible appearance, even though he is the messenger of the month. Excited, the director points a finger and warns about an important special mission meeting. The protagonist tries to refuse, claiming exhaustion, but his superior insists that he go. Defeated by the insistence, the boy sighs and ends up agreeing to attend the meeting. Inside the meeting room, an official declares the start of the presentation for the team. Jungkook watches the explanation in silence while the speaker displays the images. The protagonist's eyes widen immediately upon recognizing the presented data. A painful memory invades his mind. With the little girl screaming his name, he remembers the moment he taught the child to use her thumb to say thank you. The sad image of the girl's injured hand activating the grenade comes back to haunt the male carrier. Back in reality, the young man raises his hand abruptly and asks a question. He questions if the team will use vehicles due to the great weight of the mission supplies. The speaker hesitates for being classified information, but decides to reveal the big plan. The document displays maps and old routes that everyone considers completely impossible. With a confident smile, the official guarantees that the dangerous crossing will be viable. The guy's heart accelerates violently upon hearing the next words said by the man. The protagonist goes into total shock upon hearing that the legendary subway is being rebuilt. Completely incredulous, the young man stands up, amazed by the revelation of that big project. The government reveals the secret goal of Reacted, revading the underground to transport weapons. The speaker warns that preliminary work will be necessary before the subway reconstruction. A guy in glasses takes the lead, explains that the operation will require an excellent record. Jungkook is surprised to learn that the mission will serve as a selection for recruits. The protagonist observes the man in the suit and wonders which department he came from. The official instructs that all those interested in the opening must head to the next room. The mail carrier smiles excitedly, imagining that he might finally be able to see a real subway. He observes his little keychain and feels his heart beat faster from such excitement. The boy clenches his fist confident, believing that he might even be able to travel on the transport. But before he can move forward, a hand enters his path and blocks the way. The mysterious man in glasses prevents him from following and warns that he is an exception to the rule. The suit-wearing man stares at him seriously and calls the messenger by his full name. The heavy doors of the room next door close and separate the guy from the other candidates. The official explains that he received strict orders to deliver a mission directly to him. The protagonist becomes suspicious and has a terrible feeling about that stranger. The man hands him a clipboard detailing the area where the mail carrier should act next. Jungkook finds the assignment strange for being a cooperative and extremely safe location. He soon concludes that the director pulled some strings to place him in a risk-free area. Understanding the situation, the boy asks calmly if he should start the work right now. Surprising the young man, the man in the suit pulls the document back and says he will give it to another. The protagonist is completely confused, questioning the reason for having seen the paper. The man explains that he only had orders and persuade him to participate in the project. Irritated by the stalling, the boy deduces that the official doesn't want to give him the job. The suit-wearing man reveals that he investigated the messenger's past and found it clean, even too clean. He displays the boy's profile, stating that it's as if he didn't exist before that job. The official deduces that someone with such a hidden identity must have an incredible ability. He suggests the boy has good connections and confesses to hating those who act sneakily. Jungkook leans in slightly irritated and asks if the man is accusing him of something. The suit-wearing man denies the accusation and says he was just introducing himself and being honest. The official admits that the mail carrier has a perfect record without ever taking easy missions. The young man finally understands that his skills are questioned for avoiding risks. The stranger in glasses confirms the suspicion while putting away his pen with an air of superiority. Suddenly, the official's radio rings, and he says goodbye coldly to answer the call. He answers, confirming that he will pay the maximum fee for an extremely dangerous delivery. The suit-wearing man warns on the radio that he will deliver the letter personally to the messenger the next day. With a determined look, Jungkook decides to prove to him what a real delivery is. He rests his hand against the door and makes a bold decision to get what he wants. Later, in the director's office, the protagonist insists on taking the most dangerous mission. The boss thinks the request is strange and asks if the boy got close to the newly arrived official. The messenger lies, saying yes, and the director ends up giving in, asking him not to die. With a sharp look, the guy promises himself to prove his worth to that official. During the night, the system recalculates the tiny chances of success of the last rescue. The sad image of Kumni's blood-stained smile invades the boy's thoughts. The protagonist's eyes widen violently upon waking up from the terrible nightmare. The young man sits on the bed, gasping after reliving the tragic moment of the girl's sacrifice. Sighing heavily, the guy admits that painful death will still disturb him. The next day, the mail carrier waits in the hallway and approaches. When the official appears, the protagonist goes straight to the point and asks about the letter the man is holding. The suit-wearing man asks to be left alone because he is very busy with other things. The official is totally in shock to hear that the boy will do the dangerous delivery. Bothered, he warns that he chose another professional, but Jungkook claims to be the replacement. The guy extends an official document, proving that his transfer was authorized. With a sharp smile, he boasts that he will finish the delivery ahead of schedule. The suit-wearing man analyzes the paper in total silence, evaluating the messenger's audacity. He narrows his eyes and asks if the mail carrier is doing that just out of pride. Jungkook replies coldly he didn't understand the question, and that it's just work. The messenger then pulls the envelope from the official's hand, speeding up the service. With the delivery in hand, the protagonist turns his back and prepares to start the journey. The suit-wearing man watches the boy walk away and makes a promise in case he returns unharmed. He adjusts his glasses and asks that the two meet again alive in the future. Jungkook walks through the corridors of the base, carrying his new correspondence. He observes the sender's name, finds it strange that someone would be called Choyan. The boy is surprised to note that the envelope is decorated with cute little bunnies. He thinks that adorable style doesn't fit the suit-wearing official at all. The protagonist simply cannot imagine that man writing the letter Pushing the thoughts away, he focuses on the mysterious glowing core in his possession. He remembers the giant beast that led the pack of monsters last night. The magic item was the only reward left after the girl's sad sacrifice. Holding the small sphere tightly, the young man reflects on his next steps. He decides that he needs to stop at an important place before starting his journey. In that destroyed world, the skies guard a silent and very frightening fury. The black pillars fell from the clouds like nails, driven into the earth itself. From those dark structures emerged beasts thirsty for destruction and a lot of death. The demons spread like flames and devoured a large part of humanity. However, amidst all that despair, the sky also left one last magical gift. The protagonist laments, having no idea if the cores are a salvation or a curse. He walks through the location, holding the rare glowing object he managed to obtain. Since normal humans cannot see magic, he doesn't know if the item is useless. He meets with Woon, an old specialist in evaluating that type of item. The guy asks for the evaluation, and the woman questions where a mail carrier got that. The young man ignores the question and asks her to verify it quickly, guaranteeing payment. The elderly woman refuses to work and says that she already knows the core is useless just by looking at it. Jong-kook sighs in frustration because the woman has dementia and cannot recognize him with no other choice. The mail carrier decides to use his old trick to convince her. With a serious look, the boy suddenly mentions the elderly evaluator's daughter. The lady opens her eye immediately and shows concern for her own child. Protagonist lies, saying that he finally completed the delivery for her daughter. He forges a sweet smile and invents that the young girl sent a big thank you. The elderly woman tries to hide her joy, acting as if that news were something trivial. Happy with the imaginary message, she takes the core and warns that the evaluation will be free. The mail carrier tries to offer bullets as payment, so as not to feel so guilty. The weight on his conscience arises because he knows the evaluator's daughter never existed. The lady turns her back to analyze the item, immersed in her sweet illusions. The young man justifies the lie, thinking that this is the only way to get the evaluation. The elderly woman returns with the object and warns that it has the highest purity she has ever seen. However, she warns the boy not to use the magic, alerting him to the high failure rate. The guy stares at the core, shocked to discover that the failure is almost 100%. Only by overcoming this enormous barrier does a core reveal its true form. Some spheres replace electricity, and others reconnect communications. However, the most valuable cores are those that grant supernatural abilities. Frustrated with the terrible luck, he stores the dangerous object inside his bag. Walking through the base, the mail carrier laments, bumping into exactly the person he most wanted to avoid. The protagonist looks away, clearly uncomfortable with that woman's unusual presence. The mysterious doctor soon asks if he used the imaginary daughter excuse to get the evaluation. Dr. Myong scolds the guy and demands that he stop playing with her patient's feelings. The young man defends himself, claiming that he didn't take advantage of the elderly woman and paid the due compensation for the work. The doctor smokes her cigarette and questions the boy's humanity for continuing with that cruel lie. The messenger agrees ironically, since the woman is always asking for favors without paying him absolutely anything. He remembers that he needed the director's help to get the rookie's mission, because it already had an owner. The boy forged a medical certificate for the colleague and sent a note to the doctor to speed everything up. The woman takes a drag on her cigarette, irritated, complaining that a simple note wasn't the right way to ask for a favor. Observing the endless complaints, he sighs, confirming why he always avoids meeting her personally. The doctor approaches and warns that the mail carrier owes her a big favor, and he just agrees without patience. Suddenly, the doctor's look changes completely, assuming a cold and very threatening red tone. She demands to be treated with respect and reminds him of his mysterious past as a powerful hunter. With a dark expression, the woman nails that nowadays he is nothing more than a simple base messenger. The scene cuts to a red light blinking intensely and announcing the mortal danger of that world. In this desolate world, some people risked everything and survived by using the feared magic cores, breaking all the near-zero probabilities of survival. They awakened incredible abilities. These users receive the coveted title of hunters and perform secret missions in the shadows of the government. With a sharp look, Jungkook reflects on being one of the survivors who successfully absorbed a core. The gigantic government complex rises imposingly under the pale light of the sun that desolate morning. With 48 hours left until the deadline, the big screens announce prayers for the messenger's safe return. The official notice declares cruelly that any delay in returning will result in the mail carrier's presumed death. Taking the first step out of safety, the young guy finally begins his dangerous journey. The protagonist tidies his bag, noting that he was a little late due to the conversation with Dr. Myung. He takes a deep breath and decides to pick up the pace. Knowing he cannot waste another second of the deadline, the gate opens, revealing the immensity of the destroyed city that awaits the guy for his mission. The destination of the mysterious letter is in one of the most brutal and isolated sectors of the entire Incheon region. The location is marked by violent power struggles, preventing the government itself from knowing who is in charge there. To make matters worse, the final settlement completely cut all its contact with the outside world. Even needing to deliver the letter by hand, he keeps the promise of finishing the work before the deadline. The boy advances through the ruins, determined to force the suit, wearing official to recognize his capacity. After walking a lot, the messenger sits down to check the map. Trying to find a shelter he knew, he comes across a huge crater and realizes that his old rest spot was obliterated. With no one to turn to around there, the young mail carrier considers whether he should deviate from his delivery route. Suddenly, the shout of an indignant man echoes through the ruins, calling the protagonist's immediate attention. Two men argue heatedly about the high price charged to cross the rebels safely. The guy realizes that the strangers are also messengers and tries to understand the reason for that fight. He hides behind a wall to observe and remembers having already seen the colleagues there at the main base. Taking advantage of the great luck of finding allies, he walks to them to ask for safer directions. The younger mail carrier mocks his partner's idea of paying for the crossing, doubting such guides. The older one tries to calm his hot-headed colleague, asking him to at least listen to the group's offer. Some mysterious figures wearing long capes stare at the two mail carriers, awaiting a decision. Jungkook ends up slipping on the rebel and falls by surprise in the middle of that tense local negotiation. The older colleague greets the boy, while the young man understands that they were negotiating with a gang. The hooded man turns to the protagonist and offers his escort services in exchange for money. With a suspicious look, the mail carrier evaluates the dark proposal, wondering if he should trust the bandits. The stranger opens a mocking smile under his hood, asking the guy not to worry about his own life. The dark figure falsely guarantees that his gang is formed only by peaceful and very friendly people. However, the boy's eyes widen upon noticing a disturbing detail that contradicts that big lie. The boy remembers the one and absolute rule of survival, that everyone must follow outside the headquarters. He faithfully believes that anyone preaching peace in a destroyed world is lying. Ignoring the gang, he decides to leave, but the older mail carrier asks him to wait. The protagonist prefers to continue the journey alone, rather than accept the gang's strange escort. Suddenly, the man pats the boy's arm and compliments his muscles with excitement. With a smile on his face, the old man announces that the boy passed the test and tells him to follow. Jungkook doesn't understand the man's attitude and decides not to take a single step in his direction. The young man finds it strange when the elderly colleague states, with total certainty, that they are going to the same place. The old man says excitedly that he is going to Baekhyun, and the protagonist warns that his destination is Incheon. Without the slightest shame, the man changes the story right then and there and agrees to go to Incheon. The rookie mail carrier narrows his eyes, realizing there is something very wrong with that subject. They start walking together, and the guy questions the true intentions of that gang. The veteran colleague states that the gang's threats about dominating the area were a pure lie. The boy agrees with the reasoning, but is curious to know how the man deduced that. The elderly man points to his own face and reveals proudly that he has mastered facial reading. Jungkook says that they have already avoided danger and suggests that each follow his own path. With a sharp look, he makes it very clear that at no point did he ask for company on the trip. Laughing loudly, the veteran ignores him and decides to follow him, causing an uncomfortable chill in the protagonist. The old man asks the boy's name and gets excited upon discovering that both share the same surname. He declares that they are practically brothers, but the young man just asks for silence. The boy reveals that he is going to the dangerous zone. While reflecting on the old man's attitudes, the elderly man warns that the location doesn't accept correspondence and compliments his new partner's courage. The rookie messenger notes that the man is stepping exact on the same footprints he leaves. He understands that the partner dismissed the bandits, knowing the risks of that sinister region. Without being able to decipher if the old man wants to help him or use him, the boy concludes that he is no rookie. With the sunset approaching, the man suggests they rest for a few hours in a building. The duo enters the abandoned construction to seek refuge in the darkness of the late afternoon. As soon as he sits on the floor, the experienced mail carrier bows his head and falls asleep instantly. Jae-kook observes that the old man's hand never leaves his bag, indicating a hidden weapon inside. The protagonist decides to close his eyes for a short time and keep his guard up against dangers. He remains leaning against the cold wall, pretending to rest under the weak light that enters the location. Suddenly, the young man opens his eyes upon hearing a suspicious sound echoing through the silence of the environment. A weapon is quickly gripped, demonstrating absolute readiness in the face of any threat. Surprisingly, the old man was also already standing, and with his pistol pointed at the darkness. The veteran gives a satisfied smile and compliments the boy's survival instincts. Jungkook grips his own weapon, stating that inattentive people die quickly in that world. The two messengers aim their pistols at a figure that emerges at the entrance of the hideout. Both keep cold looks and evaluate minutely every movement of the mysterious intruder. The man retreats, terrified, raising his hands and imploring that his colleagues not shoot him. The armed duo watches the trembling silhouette, illuminated under the weak lights of the filthy hallway. The intruder reveals himself as Mr. Kim, crying in despair from fear in front of their weapons. The veteran thinks it's strange to see him and asks how he escaped the gang of criminals alive. Kim stutters, trying to explain himself, and starts walking slowly in the direction of the two partners. Jungkook's expression darkens at that same moment, and he orders the subject firmly to stop. He points the barrel of the pistol directly at the man, ordering him not to move anymore. The newcomer tries to use the familiarity from before to calm the absurd tension of the situation. Ignoring the protagonist's lethal warning, the man insists on taking one more step forward. A warning shot cracks violently against the floor and startles the intruder messenger. Jungkook warns that he won't repeat the order and demands that the subject open his own jacket. With a low and dark look, Mr. Kim slowly obeys the boy's terrible demand. Mr. Kim starts opening his own coat, slowly under the watchful eye of the veteran colleague. The old man widens his eyes, completely shocked, and murmurs his companion's name. The intruder finally reveals what he hides on his chest, while a red light blinks in the dark. A dangerous time bomb is attached to his body, and the veteran asks what happened. In tears, the subject explains that the gang stole everything he had after pretending to help him. He cries, saying he let his guard down because he had seen a child walking along with the gang. Jungkook maintains his coldness and points out that using children as bait is the classic tactic of looters. The boy explains that no real settlement would take a child on dangerous missions. The old man alerts to the gravity of the situation, and the protagonist agrees with a dark look. Staring at the street through the window, the young man concludes that the enemies are definitely watching them. He knows that whoever planted the explosive must be hidden somewhere there in the ruins. The gang's true goal is to use Kim as bait to kill whoever tries to help and steal everything. Without showing pity, the boy warns that Kim is already a dead man and tells the old man to get his things. The intruder begs for help, but the protagonist cocks the weapon, irritated at not being heard. He orders the man to lie face down on the floor, with the bomb facing down as a precaution. The subject swears that the bomb is only on the front, and the mail carrier asks him to pay very close attention. The guy crouches beside Kim, demanding to know absolutely everything about the looters. Trembling with terror, the man reveals that the enemy gang has dozens of armed henchmen. He reports the existence of two leaders cyborgs, who supposedly planned to attack another settlement. The boy soon asks for the target's location, but Kim despairs, guaranteeing he doesn't know. Jong-kook deduces that if the gang intends to hire mercenaries, the enemy group is huge. Kim also remembers that he spoke directly to the dark figure who led the group. Bothered by the man's weakness, the veteran colleague calls him in a tone of reproach. The old man turns his back, picking up his bag, and promises to report his sad death to headquarters. Fallen on the floor, the intruder looks at the boy, begging one more time for a chance to live. The guy stares at Kim and states that having time to accept one's own death is already a blessing. The subject swallows hard, and silence takes over the location while terror consumes him. After all, in that ruined world, mortal dangers like monsters and snipers appear out of nowhere. The duo of messengers advances into the darkness. Knowing that lives vanish in the blink of an eye, completely alone, Mr. Kim cries on the filthy floor, waiting for his sad end. Suddenly, a big flash followed by a loud noise echoes through the silent ruins. The two messengers hear the sound of the terrible explosion while walking through the streets. Jong-kook stops walking and looks out of the corner of his eye at the red glow illuminating the cold night. The protagonist's face is bathed in the light of death, reflecting the mourning of that moment. The veteran colleague breaks the silence, chewing on a piece of food and mentioning Mr. Kim. He asks the reason for the boy questioning Kim about the bandits if the intention was to flee. The old man gives a convinced smile, doubting that the guy seeks revenge on his own. Ignoring the joke, the guy laments that the gang stole the dead man's valuable power core. The boy remembers that the subject's core had an almost absolute failure rate. He supposes that the man kept the item only as a desperate guarantee to survive. Using the magical artifact in the face of imminent death would never be an easy decision to make. The duo resumes their walk, and the old man compliments the protagonist's mysterious abilities. The gentleman displays a cunning smile and reveals he already knows the secrets of the guy's special weapon. Suspicious, the young man invents that he just found the valuable hunter's revolver in the trash. The veteran laughs at the lame excuse, finding the big lie of his new partner amusing. In his mind, the guy remembers the time he acted as a hunter before changing careers. He evaluates that the current loneliness of the messenger job combines perfectly with him. The guy admits to himself that things got out of control in this last big mission. With nightfall approaching, the old man points to a building in ruins, suggesting rest. Jong-kook warns that the location has monster tracks, leaving the elderly man completely confused. The protagonist uses his hands to form a small frame and evaluates the structure in ruins. With an attentive and analytical look, the guy refuses the idea of resting in that place. He evaluates the construction and concludes that the chances of the location being safe are almost zero. The veteran questions the reason for that decision, and the young man changes the subject without giving explanations. Displaying a confident smile, the guy asks the colleague to see the choice as a hunch. The hidden truth is that there were shattered windows, indicating a danger prowling the area. After finding a safer shelter, the messenger finally closes his eyes and sleeps. He wakes up confused with the morning light and wonders how long he slept there. Looking around, the protagonist notes the silence of the place and calls for the elderly partner. The environment is completely empty, revealing that the old messenger disappeared during the night. Observing the clear sky in the morning, the boy understands that he ended up committing a big mistake. The old man's destination doesn't matter now, and the guy focuses on the true problem of the situation. With a frustrated countenance, he recognizes that he failed badly by letting his guard down completely. The young man walks, indignant with himself for having acted so naively and imprudently. Sighing heavily, the protagonist laments committing basic mistakes lately. The image of little Kangni's sad smile resurfaces, haunting the mail carrier's mind. Grabbing his head, the guy forces the bad thoughts away and decides to focus on the mission. With his willpower restored, the guy resumes the path and spots his destination. A very fortified military base rises on the horizon under the name name of Settlement AAA. The rebel shelter was erected by deserters and is protected by gigantic old cannons. The lethal weapons were modified to target people, making the government give up on the location. That area became a place without hope, and the guy faces the big challenge in front of him. The protagonist walks toward the huge armed fortress, thinking about how he could enter. He remembers the doctor, impressed to discover that his trip would be to that place. The doctor thought it strange for someone who always avoids risks to want to go to such a cursed location. In the memory, the young man got irritated with the insinuations, demanding that she stop with the nonsense. With an ironic smile, the woman revealed she wasn't so worried about the guy's great luck. Back to the present, an armed guard bars the messenger's entry at the big gates. The masked sentinel orders the guy to get out and warns that the shelter refuses correspondence. Without being shaken, the protagonist maintains his posture and states that he doesn't know the real job. The mail carrier explains calmly that besides packages, they also deliver danger alerts. The guard widens his eyes, fearing that a huge black pillar will fall and destroy their base. With an ironic smile, the guy displays the cute envelope and confesses that this time it's just a letter. The tense mood returns quickly, while a small piece of debris falls and reinforces the enormous danger. The soldier threatens the young man, stating that a signal with his hand will cut him in half right then and there. A gigantic anti-aircraft cannon aims at the protagonist, demanding that he leave forever. Staring at the cannon, the young man doubts the base would waste heavy ammunition on an outsider. He smiles confidently, thinking about the immense benefits he will have by completing that dangerous delivery. The guy advances courageously, knowing the points for that mission are worth taking the risk. Walking against danger, he remembers the doctor's old words about his enormous luck. Boldly, the messenger extends his finger and pushes the enemy rifle's barrel away from his own chest. The boy argues mockingly that being born in a destroyed world already proves his enormous lack of luck. The protagonist warns coldly that bravado will never stop him from completing his beautiful work. Furious with the mail carrier's cheeky attitude, the soldier grips the rifle, prepared to start the attack. Maintaining total control of the situation, the audacious messenger proposes a big game with his own life. The guy's blue eye shines intensely as he challenges the enemy to shoot with his huge cannon. He nails his mortal bet, guaranteeing that the guard's rifle is completely out of ammunition. The soldier starts to sweat cold and is shocked to have his biggest secret revealed by the enemy. Trembling with fear, the sentinel tries to understand how a simple delivery person can exude so much strength. Terror dominates the terrified soldier upon realizing he messed with the wrong person of that underworld. The guard realizes, terrified, that the mysterious messenger smiles even with a weapon pointed at him. With a frightening calm, the guy grabs the barrel of the heavy rifle and pushes it to the side. Shock takes over the soldier, who completely loses his balance and falls to the ground. Staring at the mail carrier, the fallen sentinel curses the intruder. Realizing the danger of the situation, he concludes in a panic that that outsider is not just a simple, obstinate messenger. Suddenly, another guard approaches through the gate and orders the messenger to move away from there. The boy warns that he only wants to deliver mail, but the soldier refuses outsiders. Protagonist's sharp look falls immediately upon the second masked sentinel. The new guard recognizes the guy, surprised, and calls him by his old title of sergeant. A memory resurfaces of the suit wearing official investigating the protagonist's record. The superior pointed out that the big problem was the past being too clean and without a trace. Jungkook closes his eyes and admits to himself that that big mystery is something natural. His blue eye shines intensely while he recalls his bloody days of the past. Before taking on the delivery bag, he lived hidden in the shadows, acting as a hunter. The boy acted as a feared instructor who taught survival tactics to recruits. A sinister red light invades his memories, recalling the dangers of that time. He recalls the terrifying creatures with immense eyes staring through a window. The young man remembers the constant tension and the brutal horror he had to face daily. Surrounded by deaths, the guy decided that he wasn't meant to work in a group and ended up quitting. That resignation caused a big demotion that threw him straight to the front line. The cursed squad dealt with suicide missions, making it clear they were expected to perish. Even in those exhausting days, the guy dealt constantly with a very peculiar recruit. The rookie sergeant smiled with his old-fashioned way of speaking while greeting him. Back to the present, the heavy metal doors of the mysterious settlement finally open. The former recruit now guides the boy inside and warns that outsiders are not welcome there. The protagonist notices the time that has passed, noting that the former rookie has already become a sergeant. The soldier agrees, laughing, and questions how he should call his former superior from now on. Proudly pointing to his arm, the boy orders the former colleague to call him a messenger. They advance through the graffiti-covered corridors of the rebel shelter, and the guy asks for the next destination. The soldier warns that before carrying out the delivery, it will be necessary to find the local captain. The partner smiles, justifying that all of that is just the old military procedure as always. Jungkook just sighs, exhausted, guaranteeing he knows those rules he hates so much very well. The doe stops in front of an old door, and a firm voice inside the location allows entry. The guard notifies his leader that the messenger has arrived and soon receives orders to wait outside. The mysterious captain asks if the guy is responsible for the huge mess at the gate. The guy disagrees with the exaggeration of the situation, while the leader notices his clear training. The leader recognizes that he was a soldier and warns that the shelter seems normal seen from the outside. However, he reveals that inside, it lacks the essentials, and the settlement reeks of rot and misery. With heavy steps, the commander approaches, suggesting the guy knows how everything works. The man questions with disdain the reason for the ex-soldier not to make the proper report. The protagonist crosses his arms and replies that now he only takes care of postal deliveries. He imitates a smiling commercial, guaranteeing fast deliveries made with a lot of love. The captain completely loses his composure, feeling a deep disgust for the corporate environment. Retaking the mission's focus, the young man approaches, warning he is only there to deliver the letter. He lifts the envelope with cute little bunnies and emphasizes that he agreed to deliver it by hand. The commander refuses the letter, justifying that the enemy base hates and ignores the government. He admits he only authorized the entry by knowing that the guy had an exceptional past. The leader promises to accept the unusual correspondence if the mail carrier accepts his terms. The man in the dark coat passes by the protagonist, creating a heavy tension in the room. Inclining his body, the leader murmurs a proposal, asking to be taken out of that location. The commander concludes his proposal by promising to provide all possible support from inside the base in exchange for that escape. The massive military cannon points directly at the sky. Bearing the enormous weight of its artillery, the mailman walks calmly and observes the imposing anti-aircraft weapon installed at the base. With a serious look, the boy turns around, analyzing the entire environment around him. He kicks the cannon's structure without ceremony, startling the sergeant who is accompanying him. The soldier questions his behavior, and the protagonist naturally explains that he is performing an inspection. A flashback from 30 minutes ago reveals the true negotiation between him and the base captain. After the leader accepts the risks of the plan, the messenger simply agrees and demands his payment. The commander walks in silence to the locker and retrieves a heavy black supply bag. The man displays 25 rare magic cores and asks if that will suffice as payment. The young man instructs the leader to inform the soldiers about his fake inspection of the base's cannons. Confused, the captain asks if the dreaded anti-aircraft weapons are part of the escape plan. The protagonist explains that in a worst-case scenario, he will have to face those cannons. Back in the present, the cloudy sky hangs over the shelter's silent communication tower. The sergeant hesitates and tries to confirm if the leader truly ordered that strange inspection. The mailman guarantees that the work is necessary for the delivery and maintains his escape plan. In his mind, he admits that he would have been kicked out immediately if he had refused the captain's request. Observing the lethal weapons, he decides it is best to check the machinery as a precaution. His colleague praises the boy's old skills, but never imagined he knew anything about cannons. Jungkook focuses on the structure and replies that he can at least figure out what is wrong with it. The protagonist's eyes glow, revealing his magical ability to analyze machinery. He sees probabilities in numbers and calculates the success and failure rates of each weapon. However, his vision fails at a distance, filling the machines with unrecognizable blurs. The boy explains that he needs to establish physical contact to activate his magic link. He rests his hand on the cold metal of the weapon and activates his observation ability. The messenger confirms that the weapons are fine, and the surgeon is puzzled by his disappointed tone. The young man explains that he can only view the data and lacks the power to repair the machinery. Frustrated, he mutters that all those complicated data points are nothing but simple numbers. The boy realizes he will need to destroy several cannons along the way during his escape route. They resume walking, and the protagonist asks about the mysterious doctor in the area. The surgeon reveals that she is the only physician available, which surprises the messenger. The soldier explains that she used to work as a veterinarian, but took up medicine out of necessity. After resigning from her military post, she began living quietly with her younger sister. Hesitant, the former recruit swallows hard and warns that the delivery will not be that easy. The soldier looks toward the destination and confesses that the older sister is a very suspicious person. The protagonist just wonders what kind of relationship the suit-wearing official might have with her. The surgeon points to a humble, old concrete residence at the end of the hallway. He tries to warn him about the woman's strong personality, but something brutal interrupts him right away. A violent kick flings the wooden door open, making the mailman step back, quickly startled. Hidden in the shadows, a woman furiously demands that the intruders disappear from her doorstep. The door slams violently against the wall, revealing the fury of the place's resident. A young blonde woman in a black tank top leans forward, irritated, and shouts that she had already said she was leaving. The young woman's fury quickly turns to confusion upon noticing she didn't recognize the two men. She stares at the young mailman, asks who on earth he is. The young man asks ironically if her eyes are just for decoration, since he is wearing a uniform. Losing patience, he ignores the blonde's anger and tells her to go call her sister already. The messenger displays the cute envelope and warns that the real recipient needs to receive it. The blonde girl steps back in surprise when the boy claims she is only the younger sister there. The protagonist repeats the order coldly, while the young woman is left completely speechless. Defeated by the stranger's boldness, the blonde girl turns her back and tells him to enter the house. The young man shows a victory smile, and the sergeant observes the scene from afar, relieved. Sergeant is shocked to hear the voice of the person the boy was actually calling. On the table, a letter decorated with cute bunnies lies next to the postal stamp. An elegant woman with a very severe posture apologizes for the slight delay. After introductions, the mailman demands to receive delivery confirmation so he can depart. The boy is relieved to finish the dangerous delivery in an area that should be so hostile. The woman extends the letter's proof of receipt, confirming the sender's address. The protagonist's eyes narrow as he notices that the signed receipt makes no sense. The proof showed that someone managed to complete a delivery in that rebel-controlled area. The main base would know about such a feat, but the director warned him that no one had succeeded there. The boy stands up and questions how Ms. Joe managed to receive the letter before him. With a serious look, the young messenger presents his questions. He asks if the resident usually uses unauthorized messenger services. The protagonist focuses his gaze, maintaining his suspicions. The doctor looks away and asks him where he got such enormous lies. The boy lifts his face and insists that it is impossible for her to have received such correspondence. Using a clandestine service would be a major crime because it bypasses all government records. The resident turns her back back in size. Frustrated by the young messenger's unwavering insistence, the young man does not judge her motives, but explains that he needs to maintain order in his work. Pulling at her hair, the doctor mutters and laughs that it would be crazy to ignore the headquarters profits. She raises her hand and firmly denies that there is any hidden trade in that place. Tying her hair back, she reinforces her denial, guaranteeing that she doesn't even send replies. With a calm look, the woman relates that the one who sends those letters is only her half-brother. She confesses that those cute tokens serve to confirm that he is still alive in the complex. Satisfied with the answer, Jungkook turns his back to leave. The woman calls out to the boy from the door and asks, surprised, about the masked messenger. She warns him that the previous messenger wore black and never revealed his real identity. The young man stops and focuses his attention upon hearing about the mysterious, dark messenger. The young man narrows his eyes, immediately understanding who that suspicious figure was. Jungkook remembers all the stories told about the worst messenger from the government base. The individual did not register deliveries in the complex and hid his intentions with the worst lies. The boy points out that the creepy mask is just to scare people, and the resident reflects thoughtfully. The woman flirts, calling the mailman above average, as she understands the real reason for the masks. Maintaining his seriousness, the young man acknowledges the compliment as he begins to leave the shelter. Foot caught against the crack of the door, the woman asks him to order her younger sister to return quickly. Observing everything from afar, the messenger understands the peculiar dynamic of that entire family. He decides to return to his own problems, focused on the impending meeting with the rebel leader. The young man meets back up with his guide and decides to finally meet the captain. The sergeant confesses his surprise that the doctor allowed a stranger to enter there. The somber boy violently grabs the old Ali's coat, changing the friendly mood. He forces the sergeant to walk side by side, demanding precise answers. Without a single smile on his face, the protagonist whispers, questioning the commander's loyalty. As the two walk, the door to the old residence suddenly locks automatically. At the base, the rebel captain receives the two strangers, anxiously awaiting their escape. The commander asks if Jungkook has already prepared the route for his mysterious escape. Jungkook focuses his attention on the enormous, dark sack leaning in the corner. The leader asks if the luggage bothers the stranger, who pretends nothing suspicious happened. The man lies, saying it is just food, clothes, and medicine that will help the fugitives from the base. The protagonist's dark eye intensifies, indicating that the leader's lie was transparent. The boy confirms the answer in a curt manner. He agrees, understanding that all of that would be valuable in a dangerous, ruined world. Captain continues the explanation, saying that is why they're going to leave the rebels behind. Observing the boy's back, the man agrees that one must get rid of what gets in the way. He states that he does not fully agree with the mailman's attitude of not thinking about what comes next. The messenger accepts the advice and evaluates all the options he has in the rescue mission. The protagonist then calmly rests his hand on the commander's huge, closed bag. Suddenly, the mailman squeezes it hard, causing a sharp scream of pain from inside it. With a confused and sharp look, the young man warns the rebel captain that he heard something move in there. Hidden deep in the bag, the intruder begs, screaming for mercy. The boy takes a step back and watches the little intruder emerge, crawling on the cold floor. Trembling with fear, the young blonde girl appears, greeting the stranger with an awkward smile. The messenger recognizes the younger sister and reminds the surprised sergeant that she should have hurried back. The commander just watches in silence as the group of fugitives accidentally grows. Once again, the girl advances desperately to the captain, hugging his legs so she won't be sent away. With a confident and innocent smile, the younger sister greets him, stating she won't be a burden to anyone. The captain just sighs, tired of the mess, and says he will need to change the entire initial plan. Evaluating the situation around the table, the military man calculates and concludes that there are now 5 members. The protagonist deduces that his old ally decided to betray the settlement to join the commander. He focuses his gaze on the leader, evaluating all the pieces, and soon asks who that 5th member would be. Walking later through the place, the young man bumps into the captain and finally asks about the escape. The commander questions the stranger about how a messenger hadn't heard anything about the masked one. The boy responds, surprised to find that the famous masked man was also operating there at the base. The messenger approaches, interested, confirming the rumors that indicate the presence of that mysterious colleague. The rebel leader asks, suspicious, why he didn't know about those things from the world outside the headquarters. Smiling ironically, the stranger says that everyone minds their own business without invading others. A major suspicion crosses his mind upon realizing the complexity of being in a territory with another messenger. The young man curses, assessing that crossing paths with the world's worst mailman would be a huge headache. He tells the captain that the band of deserters should try to avoid being seen by that masked colleague. But soon his thoughts change, and he questions the military man about how he discovered everything about that figure. Walking alone through the debris and rubble, the mailman remembers the tense conversation from the day before. The rebel laughed the supposed principles of a base that ignored what came from outside its security. He reported that the mysterious messenger controlled the profits from deliveries and purchases of materials. The commander admitted that, in the end, the rebel leadership managed to have the stranger in the shelter's hands. While some took advantage of this large profit, the simple soldiers were starving to death in the area. The protagonist listened, furious, already imagining the large, abusive monopoly of local deliveries. He also confirmed the blatant lie that the masked man had never spoken to the captain there. Evaluating the strange coincidence, the former soldier assesses the true motivation behind his old companion's quick visit. The boy just nods, piously believing that he was, in fact, sent there only to test the commander's emotions. However, he points out that the whole relationship recounted there seems to be the opposite of who would actually be on the leash. The imposing shadow of the hooded messenger seems to control the entire base and its profits at his whim. With relaxed fingertips, he swears to remain in command, stating that the masked danger wouldn't even affect him. The messenger turns in the room and addresses the younger sister in a very severe tone and with his cutting voice. He reminds her that her older sister demonstrated she was against the dangerous departure from their new, abandoned home. The former military man quickly adjusts his posture, revealing he hadn't convinced her of anything regarding his departure. He only threatens to use brutal force should the final moment be one of total stubbornness from the woman. The girl is left confused, not understanding the real and significant reasons that lead that stranger to do such things. She is suspicious of the exacerbated kindness, pointing out it is a strange attitude for someone who would earn a fat prize. With a determined look, Jungkook admits he is there for the money, however. That is still not the end of his payment. He looks at the cold door, focused on an important, greater goal for his entire long saga there in the enemy's lair. Smiling ironically, the boy cannot disappoint the only crazy person who had confidence in him at the main headquarters. The stone streets highlight a giant shadow, projecting itself into the memory of the original grand goal of that entire challenge. The delivery of the small pink envelope seals the fate of that family in the rebel shelter. The suit, wearing official, just wishes that his family returns safely to the headquarters. With firm steps, the young mailman approaches the younger sister to reveal his plan. The blonde girl listens attentively while he warns that, of course, the correspondence is not the letter. Extending his hand, the protagonist declares that the true delivery is the two sisters. The bold revelation leaves the young girl completely surprised by the stranger's intentions. The boy remains calm while the girl demands that he fulfill his great promise. She holds the young man's hand, begging for him to manage to convince her older sister. The messenger's eyes suddenly notice the rigid texture on the little blonde girl's fingers. He notices a huge shooter's callus on the index finger of the apparently innocent girl. The protagonist pulls his hand back gently, disguising his important military discovery. He walks away, guaranteeing that he will drag the stubborn doctor out if need be. The heavy metal door closes, leaving Anna alone in that cold corridor of the base. The girl smiles upon noticing the rebel captain, laughing silently in the darkness of the place. The man admits he thought the old stories about that messenger were a fine exaggeration. The legend said that the stranger had already annihilated an entire elite squadron alone. Observing the door, the captain understands that the young man already planned to escape with everyone from the start. The doctor listens to the legend, impressed by the mortal capacity of that young stranger. Under the darkness of the night, the group decides to prepare light items for the escape the next day. Zhou Xing'ai confronts the boy, demanding to know Anna's whereabouts and refusing the dangerous escape. Jungkook stares at her seriously, questioning if she intends to stay in a doomed place. The woman grits her teeth, aware that the situation in the shelter is becoming worse and worse. Taken by rage, she argues that the outside world is garbage just as big as the base. The messenger breaks her resistance, reminding her that out there, they will all be together as a family. Turning his back, the young man makes his firm promise to get both of them out of the settlement alive. The storm falls outside, while the boy's thoughts go over his escape plan. He trusts in the previous sabotage he performed on the immense anti-aircraft cannons of the armed fortress. A devastating roar breaks the night, surprising the boy with a colossal explosion. Bodies are thrown violently through the air, revealing the failure of the mailman's strategy. Amidst the huge chaos, a soldier's desperate scream orders everyone to split up. The Allied sergeant suffers brutal injuries during the terrible and unexpected night attack. Bleeding from the face, the protagonist widens his magic eye, understanding the situation. Above all of that, a mysterious figure observes the destruction from the top of an old building. The somber, masked messenger raises his fist, proving to be behind the terrible attack. The enemy's macabre gaze pierces through the hole in the mask, totally focused on his prey. In another moment, the rebel captain is seen walking through the silent corridors of the base. The leader displays a calculating expression while walking toward his superior's office. A henchman bows to the man's arrival at the room of the great commander of that settlement. The imposing leader, smoking a cigar, admits to having serious problems with the new messenger. The captain warns that the boy's success might end up attracting more mailmen to the base. The man narrows his eyes, plotting something lethal to keep the secrets of the rebel fortress. Observing a crate of supplies, the commander orders the silent death of the stranger. The captain lowers his gaze, revealing that it was exactly about this assassination that he was going to speak. The narrative goes back one day to the moment of the secret planning of the great escape through the facilities. Jungkook suggests calmly that they leave through the front door using the excuse of trades. The captain listens to the unusual plan, trying to understand the bold strategy of the novice messenger. The boy uses air quotes, reminding them that they are used to clandestine mailmen. The younger sister Anna confesses her enormous confusion and doesn't understand the logic of using free trade. The doctor explains to the group that messengers are like golden carriages to the soldiers. The arrival of an official mailman always causes a stir due to the intense trading of supplies. The protagonist smiles confidently and decides to use the messenger's fame as a great distraction. He explains that the illegal deliveries of the masked one only benefited the settlement's leaders. The boy raises his finger, stating that it is enough to use the right words to convince the starving troops. The captain then informs his superiors that the stranger hid large supplies near the base. The bold commander smokes his cigar and questions if the mailman's information is really reliable. The leader suggests creating a search team, and the young man agrees that this will be the perfect excuse. Walking through the facilities, the rebel captain sighs heavily, reflecting on the whole plan. The former recruit salutes, and the leader asks if his part of the plan is already well prepared. The sergeant confirms his work, while the partner warns that the excuse also worked. While they walk through the long tunnel, the commander decides to silently thank his subordinate. The colleague doesn't understand the reason, and the leader thanks him for agreeing to participate in that escape. With a nostalgic look, the military man remembers the terrible day when monsters attacked the location. In that dark era, all of them still follow the orders of the main government headquarters. The soldier remembers that all of them risked their own lives, believing they were protecting innocent civilians. However, the sad truth revealed that they were fighting only to protect the superior's contraband. The captain laments the betrayal and agrees that the rebel base ended up just like the original headquarters. Despite everything, the soldier smiles, remembering having been saved by his captain on that lethal day. He swears to follow his companion to the end, and the leader says the old military titles will disappear. The sergeant breaks to a big smile and asks if he will finally be able to call him whatever he wants. The captain authorizes being called Colder Brother, making the former recruit quite excited. Suddenly, the military man's eyes widen in absolute shock upon noticing something terrifying. A shadowy, threatening silhouette with glowing eyes emerges mysteriously in the middle of the mist. The commander turns, confused, and calls for his subordinate, who remains totally paralyzed. The recruit tries to disguise his enormous nervousness and warns that he saw a macabre presence right behind them. The leader looks toward the long, dark corridor, but the strange entity simply disappeared into thin air. Silence takes over the tunnel while the captain stares into the void, trying to understand what happened. The sky turns dark, and the heavy clouds announce that a terrible storm will fall this night. The leader warns the mailman that everything worked out, and now they just need to resolve the big cannons. The protagonist confirms the situation, demanding that no one go up to the roof to interfere with the sabotage. The captain guarantees that he has total control of the area, and that the troops will stay far away from there. With a confident smile, the young man warns that he can destroy the machines with total peace of mind. Without losing time, the boy cuts the firing circuits of the cannon to free the great escape route. The young man touches the machinery, trusting that the enemy rifles will also be successfully disabled. The messenger activates his magic ability and creates a visual link with the immense anti-aircraft weapon. The protagonist pulls his hand away, satisfied with being able to observe the weapon's data from a distance. His blue eye glows intensely, confirming that the big plan will be a huge success. However, the magic vision fails suddenly, displaying a frightening 0% chance. Ignoring the terrible sign, the mailman walks away, stating he has no time for new unforeseen events. The captain goes down the stairs, warning he will fetch the two girls so they can begin the long escape. The man stops suddenly in the middle of the hallway after noticing something quite unusual in front of him. He stares at a crate of supplies left there and is ironic about the great leader's enormous hypocrisy. The commander's special shipment arrived just on the night the group plans to flee from there. Far from there, Toods watched the base gate, completely exhausted and bored with the patrol. One of the sentinels raises his gaze, extremely confused, upon noticing an intruder approaching. They point their weapons at the hooded figure, ordering the subject to move away from the cannons. The second soldier lowers his companion's weapon, remembering the direct orders given by the captain. He points to the mailman's armband, stating that the messenger has total authorization. The soldier steps back, intimidated, finding it strange that the delivery man wears such a creepy dark mask. The masked entity does not say a single word and moves quickly to carry out his attack. Far from there, the protagonist waits patiently in the room while the leader displays all the payment. The rebel captain is ironic about the fact that the young mailman hadn't even asked for his payment. The protagonist holds a bag, saying he would take the cores after the great escape. The commander remains silent while the boy says he already knew the answer. The messenger promises to return the other half of the payment should the plan fail. The military man spots a rare magic core and asks what the boy is hiding in there. Far from there, young Anna adjusts a gas mask, complaining about the discomfort of the disguise. Shin-ai says her sister would attract too much attention without the disguise, since she isn't a soldier. The former recruit explains he used the false pretext of a medical inspection of the products. The sergeant smiles and says he also included the family's younger sister in the fake report. The escape group now consists of the mailman with the captain and the base's strict doctor, and little Anna completes the rescue team using her strange gas mask disguise. The messenger claps his hands to get the attention of the entire group of fugitives. The boy states that the base leadership is quite relaxed to accept these lies. Focusing on the plan, the young man orders them to abandon any unnecessary wait for the escape. Shinai agrees with the idea, warning that they will only take what is very valuable. The commander questions if there is any useful item to be used during the journey. He points to the warehouse, suggesting they use the old smoke grenades stocked there. The military man observes the old rations and decides that they should eat everything right there. The night sky announces a huge storm falling over the entire base region. Firm steps echo through the wet ground, while the heavy rain bathes the fortress courtyard. The group of fugitives advances silently in the rain, dressed in dark capes. On alert, Sentinel watches the perimeter from the top of an immense metal tower. The soldier points his heavy weapon and demands that the intruders stop immediately. The young man raises his head calmly, and the guard seems to recognize the messenger. The sergeant takes the lead and asks if the fellow guard has already received the report. The sentinel confirms that he will check the orders regarding the search for those supplies. Hidden in her hood, the doctor asks quietly if that will really work. Protagonist trusts the sabotage fully and guarantees that everything is under control. The young mailman plans to lead the group to the safety of the nearest forest. Suddenly, the heavy metal gate begins to move to clear their exit. The passage finally opens, and the sergeant asks for total silence from the group. The rain continues punishing the base structure, while the tension of the escape only increases. The group of 5 fugitives finally crosses the gate toward the world outside. Anna breathes a sigh of relief under the gas mask and asks if they are already safe. The mailman denies it and states that they still cannot lower their guard in enemy territory. The boy warns that they will only be safe in the forest, but something suddenly calls his attention. The rebel leader thinks it strange that the gate remained wide open behind them. The commander widens his eyes, deducing that a pursuit team will be sent. Maintaining his calm, the protagonist orders that no one look back from now on. He narrows his eyes, trying to understand how the enemies discovered everything so quickly. Despite the error, the messenger feels relieved to have some great time advantage. He warns the girls that the enemies don't even know that their own weapons were sabotaged. The young man instructs the team to use the smoke grenade and run toward the trees. Suddenly, the anti-aircraft cannon's zero probability begins to fail and changes. The mailman stops walking abruptly, startled by what his ability shows. The young messenger realizes with great horror that the odds have just changed. His magic eye glows intensely in complete shock before the impossible. The immense cannon aims at the fugitives, marking a 100% chance of a lethal hit. The boy panics upon noticing that the heavy weapons have started working again. With no time for anything else, the protagonist screams desperately, ordering everyone to split up. A swift shot cuts through the air, violently tearing the sleeve of the messenger's jacket. The former recruit widens his eyes while spitting blood after being hit by the enemy attack. The boy steps back, his face wounded, and watches his companion fall to his knees on the wet ground. With blood running down his face, the protagonist stares at the skies, perplexed by the ambush. Heavy boots step into puddles of water, marking the sniper's slow and lethal approach. The imposing figure of the masked one appears atop the roof, mercilessly ordering the attack. The mailman widens his glowing eye, shocked to understand who the true enemy is. Fear takes over the young man upon realizing that, suddenly, his legs cannot move. He remains completely paralyzed, while an invisible force holds his body in place. Under the intense rain, the boy begs mentally for his legs to move again. With extreme effort, the young man finally manages to break the paralysis and run to save his life. The mailman's magic eye quickly captures the deadly aim adjusting in his direction. The heavy anti-aircraft cannon turns against the messenger, leaving him with no chance to dodge. A terrible red number appears in his vision, indicating a near 100% chance of death. With blood on his face and death imminent, he asks himself if that will be his tragic end. Amidst the despair, the protagonist remembers the old man who kept the core for the final hour. The veteran partner said he would use the magic item only when death was absolute. The survival instinct speaks louder, and the young man's hand quickly grabs the rare magic core. With a desperate smile, the young man displays the second ability core of his entire life. Far from the chaos, the soldiers on the roof get in touch with the headquarters as to update the situation. The curt voice on the radio informs them of the new and lethal operating rules authorized by the headquarters. The guard is confused while the voice on the radio passes the operational authority of the cannon. The government order confirms that the masked assassin has total control of the rebel base. From the top of the base, the masked villain focuses his vision and extends his hand to his little prey. Turning his back on the danger, the messenger swears to resolve the dangerous ambush alone. The masked entity mercilessly orders the rain of bullets to begin against the fugitives. The heavy anti-aircraft cannons open fire, shooting with fury at the group in the darkness. The caped villain observes the flashes of the shots, falling upon the victims in the storm. The rain continues falling hard, slowly erasing the tracks of the intense destruction left behind. The somber figure observes silently the lethal result of his fearsome armed ambush. Suddenly, the masked villain's dark gaze widens in shock before the impossible. Amidst the storm, the young protagonist stands up, raising his hand to the skies. The messenger displays a challenging smile, his magic eye overflowing with pure energy. The powerful red energy runs through the young man's entire arm to the mysterious magic core. The magic jewel radiates a blinding light, completely covering the entire battlefield. Shinhai observes the explosion of light, not understanding where the young man got such power. Suddenly, the scenery changes, revealing the young man sitting alone on a clean and quiet train. He stares at the illuminated train cars, reflecting if that would be an illusion before death. The protagonist deduces that he died since he decided to bet his own life on an immense risk. Gliding his gaze through the place, he admits, melancholic, that the end on a train car is almost ironic. The distant memory of an old acquaintance makes him remember his terrible past choices. A female voice reprimands him, pointing out the huge difference between now and the days of his childhood. The entity reminds him that in the past, he absorbed a core only to be able to flee and survive. His magic power helped him escape and stay alive in all the dangerous missions until today. He confesses with frustration that this great ability had always been just a cowardly excuse. The boy's eye expresses his greatest pain of never having been able to change the inevitable fate. The low probability of saving Kungi's life still consumes the frustrated mailman's soul. Remorse drowns his heart upon remembering the little child sacrificed in the last mission. He laments that people never listen to his true warning. Based on those numbers, trapped in his great agony, the boy mutters that all his magic is reduced only to numbers. In his mind, he reflects that some would call that small 1% chance madness. The messenger admits he has survived until today only by always following the safest path and fleeing. He smiles bitterly, confessing that staying alone had always been easier. But now he failed himself. Suddenly, the doors of the imaginary train begin to open slowly before him. The protagonist stands up and stares at the exit, wondering if he should finally disembark. The young man takes a step forward, prepared to accept his sad final fate. However, a sudden kick hits him square on and throws him violently backward. Fallen on the floor, he widens his eyes, confused to see little Kyung-hee blocking his passage. The girl turns her back and warns that is not yet the messenger's final stop. The child points her finger firmly, ordering the young man to continue his journey. She approaches and asks that from now on, he change things with his own hands. With the beautiful smile, the girl raises her finger and gives him advice about magic probability. The mailman awakens from his illusion, widening his red eyes and returning to reality. He stares at the glowing core in his hand, realizing with shock that the magic item really worked. Despite the burning heat in his body, the young man feels there may be some hidden side effect. The messenger raises his gaze, noticing that his view of probabilities has started to oscillate wildly. He observes that the mortal chance of the anti-aircraft cannon working remains almost absolute. Suddenly, a strange red crack appears in the air, breaking the young man's vision. The probability of a hit is completely shattered and plummets to near zero. At the top of the base, the masked villain turns his face, scared to notice something very wrong with his weapon. The assassin panics upon realizing that the heavy cannon has stopped responding to commands. Believing it to be a problem with the ammunition, the evil entity decides to check the machinery up close. The protagonist extends his hand, impressed by his new, recently awakened ability. His gaze intensifies upon understanding that he didn't just alter the numbers, but inverted them. The enemy's success rate, which before meant his death, was now practically non-existent. The young man gasps with exhaustion, assessing that the new magic core improved his old power. Taking advantage of the opportunity, the mailman quickly takes his hand to his military revolver. He aims at the immense tower, noticing a minimum chance of disabling the enemy weapons. Trapped in place by his numbed legs, he knows that the dreaded cannons still point at him. With a bloodied smile on his face, the messenger wishes to manage to change that probability. Suddenly, strong bolts of energy begin to run through the entire body of the wounded stranger. He widens his eyes, confused to feel his shoulder bag burn with an unbearable heat. The mailman turns his face, surprised to understand where all that strange magic originates. A memory of the little child, smiling, illuminates the mind of the determined and courageous messenger. The boy extends his hand, and the probability of his shot hitting soon jumps to absolute success. His magic vision focuses directly on the large target, forming an extremely precise red aim. The protagonist holds the weapon firmly and points the barrel toward the base's machinery. Using his new power, he forces the small original chance of a hit to shatter in the air. The number jumps quickly, inverting the values and guaranteeing a near-certain victory to the young man. On the roof, the soldier warns that the heavy weapon has started working again and asks for orders to attack. The messenger reflects, melancholic, that his gift had always served only to witness others' deaths. The young man points his weapon at the stormy skies, decided to alter this terrible fate. The bloodied face of little Kungi motivates him, never to be a mere spectator of death again. With a firm look, the young man prepares to fire his attack against the great armed fortress. He remembers the old messenger asking about the famous, special bullets of his mysterious revolver. The protagonist pulls the trigger of the heavy weapon, stating he will change the situation on his own. The shot creates an immense flash of light, piercing the rainy darkness with its lethal force. The powerful projectile tears through the heavy storm, flying at high speed toward the enemy roof. The magic shot hits the gap between the large metal pipes of the imposing anti-aircraft cannon. The impact overheats the heavy military structure, completely melting the rebel base's machinery. The messenger lands a perfect shot, and the great anti-aircraft cannon explodes into pieces. The sudden explosion leaves the dangerous, masked villain completely stunned. Taking advantage of the chaos, the small team flees, running quickly through the dark forest. The mailman looks over his shoulder to ensure that they are safe far from the base. Under the moonlight, the boy observes the smoke rising from the now distant fortress. Exhausted from running, Anna removes her disguise, warning that they can stop now. The heavy gas mask falls to the floor after their intense, desperate escape through the rain. The young woman gasps heavily while trying to catch her breath after running so much. The protagonist turns his face and observes the former recruit carrying a huge weight. The sergeant carries the commander's lifeless body and asks for a moment to rest. With a sad look, the soldier confesses that he wouldn't be able to abandon his captain. The messenger laments not having managed to find the amputated arm of the old leader. Although they have escaped with their lives, the somber mood prevents any joy in the group. The metal shovel blade pierces the wet earth, opening space for the cold grave. The sergeant mutters that it has been a long time since the last burial of a companion. The brave rebel captain's body finally rests, wrapped in a dark cloak. The former recruit observes the protagonist's enormous calm in the face of the tragic death. The military man remembers the time he was transferred to the base after injuring his leg. He throws the earth into the grave and admits, melancholic, that things almost never change. Burying the body, the young messenger asks if the old wound still hurts. The soldier confirms the continuous pain, but is grateful to have found a new purpose. The boy widens his eyes, remembering that old fracture was something very serious. Even with the pain, the man managed to carry all the equipment equipment and the leader's body, the protagonist admires his old partner who never gives up, no matter the difficulty. Facing the tome, the messenger breaks the silence by offering him a mailman position. Shinai interrupts the conversation, surprised by the unusual idea of recruiting a deserter. The strict doctor asks that they act with more intimacy now that they have fled from danger. The boy agrees and asks about the younger sister's whereabouts so they can continue the journey. With a melancholic look, the woman reveals that the girl needed to be alone for a little while. Shinai guarantees that the young woman is very strong, but the weight of the tragedy affected her mind. She confesses that her little sister feels completely guilty for the captain's death. The doctor clarifies that the deceased military man never had any ulterior motives with the girl. The leader's only and true desire was to ensure the little sister's safe escape. The mailman clenches his fist, feeling that the weight of that guilt belongs only to him. He remains in silence while he absorbs the sad words of the desolate doctor. Trying to liven up the atmosphere, Shunhai reinforces that they survive thanks to the boy. The sergeant agrees with excitement, praising the destruction of the giant anti-aircraft cannon. Visibly uncomfortable with the false fame, the messenger mutters that he just had luck. He admits to himself that the salvation was the magic core having awakened evolution. The boy had always thought that evolving powers was a myth and is grateful for the incredible luck. However, his astute gaze assesses that he wasn't the only person to have had a lot of luck. He observes Shinhai from afar, reflecting on the sisters' enormous proximity during the explosion. Both came out completely unscathed from an attack that surely should have killed them. The young man deduces silently that one of the two young women also possesses a magic power. Knowing that abilities are absolute secrets, he chooses to keep his suspicions to himself. The mailman looks at the bright moon, warning that they need to start walking again. The sergeant offers to fetch the girl, and Shinhai decides to accompany him into the forest. Resting, leaning against a tree, the protagonist relaxes while he holds his bag. Suddenly, his eyes widen upon remembering a very important detail. The boy recalls that his package caught fire exactly when he used his magic. The young man searches anxiously in his bag and confirms that there really was something very important kept in there. The messenger sighs, realizing that miracles command a high price and that nothing in life comes for free. Far from there, the masked assassin uses a radio communicator to contact the base soldiers. The masked villain orders the immediate end of the pursuit, contradicting the commander's wishes. He explains that there is a dangerous magic user among the fugitives, and that advancing would be pure suicide. The masked one observes the smoke on the horizon and admits that the mailman is much more dangerous than they said. With a furious look, the villain remembers the blinding flash caused by the boy's incredible magic attack. Analyzing the entire confrontation, the assassin concludes that the mailman definitely didn't act alone. The villain visualizes the gas-masked young woman, remembering the exact moment of the attack and the impact. The criminal deduces, shocked, that the group of fugitives actually possesses two magic core users. In the forest, the protagonist laments upon counting that now only 13 magic stones remain in the bag. The sack the deceased captain delivered contained 25 cores that overheated suddenly. He realizes that 12 cores turned completely black after all their energy was sucked out. The mailman holds the empty magic jewel, understanding the high cost of his new, recently awakened power. The young man concludes that the gift of inverting probabilities demands an enormous sacrifice of magic energy. The big problem is that the ability burns 6 cores at once, and achieving that is very difficult. The messenger reflects, worried, about what other limitations this dangerous magic might hide. The boy decides that he will need to test his abilities calmly. When he has a good opportunity, he plans to look for the doctor as soon as he arrives at the headquarters, in the hope that she might still have some cigarettes. Suddenly, the protagonist's thoughts are interrupted by a sudden bump against his back. Younger sister Anna apologizes for the bump and complains that she cannot see very well in the darkness. The boy thinks the excuse is strange since the night sky is still clear enough to walk well. Shinhai approaches and suggests that the messenger walk in front, guiding her poor little sister by the hand. The doctor explains that the fragile Anna suffers from terrible night vision and needs a lot of help. The protagonist narrows his eyes, admitting to himself that he still cannot decipher that young woman. He understands the simple surgeon's attitudes because he had been watching him since the old army days. The Dr. Shy is also easy to read, despite her severe and quite rigorous way of acting. However, Fragile Anna continues to be an enormous mystery to the stranger's sharpened instincts. The young man notes that she is the weakest of the group, and the mourning for the deceased captain makes her very unstable. To protect her from danger, the messenger extends his hand and keeps her very close to him all the time. He asks that the girl simply hold his hand and continue following his steps. The girl widens her large golden eyes, a bit surprised by the young man's enormous kindness. The surgeon and the doctor despair, thinking that affectionate attitude a huge and enormous absurdity. Frustrated with the unnecessary drama, the mailman sighs and decides to wear a dark glove on his hand. Without patience for the shouting, he extends the arm with the glove to resolve that problem quickly. The doctor drills the young man with her gaze, expecting him to maintain respect for the younger sister. Anna displays an innocent smile, stating that the simple act of holding hands is no problem at all. The mailman holds the young woman's hand, provoking the older sister who watches them, attentive to every step. To make the situation worse, Anna confesses, excited that she had already held his hand back there in the dark room. The companions panic at the great revelation and furiously reprimand the boy's attitude. Later, the fugitives find an abandoned building and decide to rest from the long and tiring escape. The doctor promises to wake everyone in 6 hours and thanks the former recruit for his enormous effort. Before sleeping, Shinhai warns calmly that she will do a small patrol of the area around the building. Protagonist agrees with the idea and only advises her not to stray too far from the campsite. Worried about the enormous danger, the surgeon offers hastily to accompany her on the patrol. The woman refuses the company brusquely and insists on going alone through the darkness outside. Completely embarrassed, she loses her patience and shouts that, in fact, she just wanted to go to the restroom. Deep silence takes over the place while the two men stare at the floor, full of shame. The boy decides to take on the mission of exploring the area, leaving the surgeon downcast and quite sad. While everyone gets distracted, a small hooded figure walks away and enters a concrete structure. Jong-uk stares at the silent night from the rooftop and is surprised to hear the younger sister's steps approaching. The girl with the melancholic gaze joins him, stating that she simply couldn't fall asleep. The messenger breaks the heavy mood and offers a bit of food, instantly cheering the young woman up. He notices, impressed, that her appetite contrasts quite a bit with that whole image of mourning and pain. His analytical gaze falls upon a small bandage on her finger and an old habit with her hands. With coldness, the young man questions openly if she usually trains any type of special throwing. He explains that he had already observed this exact habit of rubbing her fingers as a preparation before. The mailman relates that the bizarre callus on her hand indicated something very different from a simple handshake. The shape of the wound points clearly to countless exhaustive training sessions involving throwing knives. Shocked by the boy's perceptiveness, the young woman asks how he discovered all that with a handshake. With a small piece of debris in hand, the messenger smiles, provoking that her knives must be very short. He throws the tiny object upward, wanting to test the girl's true, lethal precision. The gaze of the apparently harmless younger sister darkens and follows the target with an instinctive and sharp fury. A metallic sound cuts the air while she launches her small and sharp weapon in the target's direction. The projectile collides precisely with the small stone and tears the heavy fabric thrown on the rooftop floor. Jungkook observes the hole in the bag, impressed by the impeccable agility of the young combatant. He continues the tests, throwing new objects under the night sky to challenge the shooter's reflexes. The young man finally admits his surprise, seeing the lethality hidden behind that fragile face. The small stone hits the floor, confirming that mysterious Anna never misses her targets. The boy laments having underestimated the young woman, assuming she was the most defenseless of the escape group. The scary aura that emanates from her proves that her survival until today was far from being luck. The night advances, silent, under the moonlight, illuminating the old, forgotten ruins of that broken world. The messenger turns his back and breaks the tension, suggesting that the pair return inside soon. The young man evaluates the girl's downcast look, noting that she harbors many hidden torments. Contemplating the vast darkness, he himself tries to organize the countless variables that clutter his mind. The violent memories of uncontrolled powers and blunting create a big knot in his thoughts. Feeling his head ache, the mailman tries to unravel the great mystery behind the lethal night ambush. He concentrates, trying to remember the crucial details that occurred as soon as the shots began. The young man recalls the moment of absolute paralysis, suspecting that the figure on the roof caused all that. The soulless mask of that terrifying assassin deeply marked the stranger's memory. With clenched fists, he swears to turn over all the secrets of that villain as soon as he returns to the headquarters. The mailman's silent fury questions if that monster continues to lead the rebel base. The scene cuts, and heavy boots step into a puddle, reflecting the somber and wet hideout of the villains. The masked executioner walks with power through the base, demonstrating his authority in the location. Staring at the rain through the blinds, the great commander continues complaining about the choices made. The rebel leader smokes, irritated, justifying that the old captain's death was very stupid. The bald man raises his voice, claiming that losing Shanghai plunged the entire military base into complete chaos. Furious, the commander turns and accuses the somber messenger of interfering by stopping the pursuit. Without losing his posture, the masked one retorts that hunting that group would be a complete waste of force. The hooded one recalls the dangerous legends that surround the mailman's incredible combat talent. The executioner's dark eye glows, stating that that young man carries a terror that surpasses the old rumors. The villain mentions with caution that he managed to spot powerful hunter armament with the boy. The image of the messenger's impossible shot hits the disturbed and cold mind of that great assassin. The rebel commander widens his eyes, deducing that the target carries an absurd aiming core. The executioner disagrees and guarantees that everything boiled down to pure luck, and that is what scares him. Confused by the explanation, the big bald man questions how a fluke can cause so much fear in them. The macabre entity warns that fighting against someone blessed by luck is a useless combat. The commander ignores the warnings, promising to kill all those who ruined his powerful base. A mysterious smoke rises from the ashtray, while the assassin asks coldly for the next steps. With a dry snap, the villain unsheathes his lethal sword, revealing that he will bring a time of peace. The story begins with Kim Song-seok in his office, telling the masked man to be careful with his tone of voice. The hooded one clenches his fists and questions if they weren't in a war stalemate with the general headquarters. Song-seok laughs and responds that for them, peace is like war, and that they are always ready to advance. However, the mysterious man states that the leader seems just to be scared of the whole current situation. He continues provoking, says that the supposed commander is nothing more than a big, fearful brat. Kim stands up abruptly from the chair and is completely indignant at being called a brat. The leader threatens to cut ties and warns that the masked one will return to being just a pathetic errand boy. The mysterious hooded partner just approaches and repeats the phrase in an extremely threatening way. He retorts, asking if the leader forgot who brought supplies when they were starving to death. The masked one states that Kim never had the real intention of advancing to Seoul or anywhere else. With a somber look, he concludes, saying that there has been more than enough time for the commander to act. Song-seok shouts that the agreement is over and tries desperately to call Major Song on his radio. The villain grabs Kim by the neck while the leader begs for Colonel Kine to come and save him from there. A dark aura appears, and the man decrees that from this moment on, the old commander is finished. He warns that the leader is stripped of his duties, while a firearm is pointed at his face. Kim's blood splashes violently through the office blinds, definitely sealing his fate. Two guards invade the room hastily with their weapons drawn and ask the assassin to wait. The man drops the bloodied body to the floor while the subordinates try to understand the situation. The soldiers aim their pistols at the masked man and shout in shock to see the lethal scene on the floor. The assassin warns Colonel Kang over the radio that Kim is dead and the operation has been advanced successfully. A voice on the other side of the communicator coldly orders him to eliminate the rest of the guards in that location. One of the subordinates questions the next step and discovers that they will turn their backs on the city of Seal. The masked one inquires if the alley knows exactly where the deceased commander and his men ended up failing. He explains that the weapons that were supposed to protect them were precisely what stopped the team's advance. The new leader orders a mission to Busan and is questioned about fugitives like mailman Wu Jaeyu. He decides that it is much better to stop worrying about the mailman and avoid any conflict for the moment. With a macabre smile, the villain reveals he has the feeling that they will bump into the young man sooner or later. Far from there, in an illuminated forest, Jong-guk feels his ear itch and thinks someone is talking about him. The young man realizes it is Jo Sho share to tickling him, and the girl says there is nothing to be done. The young woman blushes slightly and asks him to remain in total silence and just keep standing there with her. The two remain hugged behind a tree, while the young man laments that the situation has reached this point. The mailman asks for his jacket after noticing the other guy has an extra shirt in his backpack. The girl smiles and begs to wear the jacket a little longer because it's much warmer than it looks. He comments that she will have plenty of chances to wear one once she finally becomes a mail carrier. The young man jokes that Shin-hai would be absolutely furious if she heard her saying something like that. The girl asks if Shin-hai has always been this extremely overprotective of him. He explains that he used to do a lot of wild things as a kid, which is why she worries so much. The mailman points out that this level of care only applies while they are living inside the settlement. The girl stares at the young man with a surprised and confused look, not fully understanding what he meant by that. Ho-cheol suddenly appears, and the protagonist asks, confused, why he hasn't gone to sleep yet at this hour. The young mail carrier is intrigued to realize that something strange is happening in that camp. He asks worriedly if the doctor, Shin-hai, hasn't returned the patrol she was supposed to do around the building. Ho-cheol replies, surprised, because he thought she was still accompanying the mailman outside. Upon noticing her backpack is still at the shelter, the young man decides to head out immediately to search for her in the darkness. He runs under the moonlight, trying to understand what would cause the doctor to disappear so suddenly. The young man stares into the dense, dark forest, wondering why she would decide to enter such a dangerous place alone. Scoring the wet ground, the protagonist ends up finding some fresh footprints marked in the damp earth. He touches the mark on the ground and realizes that the trail heads toward the deepest part of that dense woods. The big problem is that the young man soon notices those boot prints definitely do not belong to Shin-hai. The boy hears strange noises among the trees and begins to suspect that he is being watched by someone. He focuses his attention on the darkness, realizing that the situation there is much more serious than he imagined. A bizarre and frightening silhouette emerges silently in the middle of the woods. Watching his every move, the protagonist realizes in full alert that those creatures had actually been watching them from the very beginning. A hooded figure with glowing eyes jumps from high up in a tree, advancing fiercely toward the young man. The mail carrier reacts with extreme calm to the surprise attack, showing he was already expecting something like that. He dodges with agility, commenting that he already had a very bad feeling about that dark place. The young man grabs the monster firmly and tears its tattered hide with one quick and very precise movement. The creature staggers backward, while the protagonist concludes that it is definitely no longer human. He observes the fallen being and reflects they were once normal people in a distant past, but now they have changed. Those monsters are actually humans who ended up being bitten by the terrible dark creatures of the world. The young man recalls that people used to call them zombies, but these new monsters do not transmit the infection. The contagion only occurs through the original beasts, and these dead ones just run wildly at the slightest sign of noise. The great danger of these creatures lies precisely in how they move quickly through the dark forest. Their speed is frightening, surpassing even the swiftness of the dark creatures that cause the infection. He focuses his attentive gaze on the enemy running toward him, preparing to make his next move. The protagonist readies himself for combat, telling himself that deep down, they are still easy to handle. He lands a devastating kick on the creature, creating a strong impact that illuminates the entire area around them. The monster is thrown far away by the immense force of the blow, colliding violently against the forest floor. The young man settles himself calmly after the 1-second confrontation, demonstrating that he didn't feel any difficulty. He stares at the defeated body with disdain, remembering that in the end, those things are still just corpses. Suddenly, various noises start to echo in the woods, and he realizes that the sound of the kick attracted more monsters. Countless fast silhouettes begin to run from all sides, advancing toward where the sound of the blow came from. Suddenly, a delicate hand grabs the protagonist's arm, stopping him from standing there in danger. Dr. Shinai pulls the young man and asks if he's lost his mind to consider fighting that huge pack all by himself. The young man tries to protest, but is quickly dragged away by the girl, who runs desperately to try to save them. The two run hastily through the bushes, while trying to lose the terrible monsters. She forces the mailman to crouch behind a log and asks in a tense whisper for him to hide right there. The doctor explains that she was right behind him and states that they will be able to lose the pack if they don't make any noise. The young man agrees about the sound but warns that those creatures also attack upon noticing any sudden movement. Shinai suggests going around silently through the rear to escape, and the boy agrees to act calmly. Just then, the doctor panics upon seeing another creature right behind them and grabs onto the young man, fearing the monsters. He reflects that he didn't see any monsters from the terrace and suspects that someone might be attracting them on purpose. The doctor whispers shyly to get the young man's attention, while they remain very close to each other. The protagonist asks if the young woman is really okay, as she still seems quite frightened by the situation. She asks in a low tone for him to let her go immediately, leaving the boy a bit confused by that reaction. The woman yells, ordering him to let her go, and the young man apologizes quickly, pulling his hands away from her waist. He asks if she really went into the forest just to use the restroom, and she retorts that she didn't mean to go that far. Shinai explains angrily that he and Anna wouldn't stop staring from the terrace while the surgeon was walking around the building. She says irritably that she ended up walking there because of them and asks nervously if the young man thinks that's funny. The doctor changes the subject and asks worriedly if the creatures are still right behind them in the darkness. The mailman replies calmly that, in fact, the monsters left quite a while ago, leaving her shocked. The young woman remains completely silent while feeling her face burn with embarrassment for having made such a fool of herself. The younger one, Anna, observes the situation in silence, trying to understand what could have happened between the two of them out there. The girl asks if they fought, and the older sister yells irritably that she has no idea what happened. Day finally breaks in the forest to the sound of birds singing, and the team prepares to continue. The protagonist puts on his famous blue jacket and informs the group that now they have a very real problem. The team's big challenge now is to find a safe way to get past the horde of zombies ahead. Through binoculars, they carefully observe the movements of the dozens of undead blocking the path. The mailman explains that the exact spot where they absolutely must pass is completely infested. Shinai analyzes the situation with the equipment and asks worriedly if the bridge is indeed full of monsters. The young man confirms the information seriously, knowing there will be no easy crossing for them in that spot. Hokiel suggests taking a long detour around the area, but the mailman insists that their only option is to pass through there. He explains that there is no time for long detours and points out that that bridge is the fastest route to headquarters. The young man closes his eyes for a moment, preparing to reveal the second and most important reason for his choice. With a steady gaze, the young man states solemnly that the only thing more frightening than zombies is people. The protagonist recalls the time he traveled to headquarters with the elderly face reader and crossed that same bridge. He remembers the warning about guerrillas in the region and decides that after Kim's death, they must be very cautious. The young man proposes that they try to cross first, and if everything goes wrong, they will look for an alternative route. The doctor asks if he truly has a real plan, and the mailman admits, sincerely, that he is still thinking about what to do. At that moment, young Anna raises her hand shyly, getting the attention of her companions on the terrace. She reveals hesitantly that she has something very important to say to help solve the big problem. The boy asks if the younger one wishes to try to open the path for them, and the girl confirms it decisively. Shin-ai asks how she would do that, and Anna touches the holster on her leg, reminding her that the mailman already knows her weapon. The younger one shows one of her throwing knives, and the young man deduces that she plans to make noise to attract the pack. The young man argues that just with the knives, there would be a limit to the monsters attracted, and asks if she has another idea. Anna displays a confident look and clarifies with a smile that her true intention is not just to throw the blades. The mailman steps forward and suggests they put something special along with the girls throwing knives. Shin-ai interrupts the conversation by holding the younger sister's arm and asks irritably what they are planning there. The doctor orders her younger sister to stay put because that dangerous mission is not for her. The mailman sighs upon noticing the family drama starting again, and the doctor demands to know the reason for his discontent. Hokiel whispers that Anna was very popular at the former AAA base, but no one dared to approach her at all. The protagonist guesses right away that the reason for all this isolation was precisely the fear of the terrible Shinhai. The surgeon agrees, revealing that the doctor is already scary normally, but becomes 10 times worse when the subject is her sister. He reports that once a soldier tried to hit on the girl, and Shin-ai simply beat him almost to death. The recruit adds that, because she was the only doctor at the base, she would beat him and then treat the man just to beat him again. The mailman listens to the bizarre story with a sweat drop, thinking he already had a hunch about the two of them. He recalls the conversation he had with Anna on the stairs about the doctor's extremely overprotective behavior. The young man recognizes that the younger one's throwing skills are amazing, but she could never shine because of her sister. He ponders that, due to the age difference in Anna being a civilian, this excessive worry is quite understandable. However, the mailman concludes mentally that the world's situation has changed, and now things need to be different. He interferes in the discussion and states that now that they are outside the shelter, whoever has the necessary strength must use it. The mailman interferes in the discussion and asks calmly for young Anna to also have the right to speak. Shin-ai agrees reluctantly and makes a hand signal asking for a moment alone to talk to the protagonist. She explains that her sister has no real combat experience and is very unstable after everything that has happened. The mailman retorts that the proposal came from the girl herself, and that she is not as weak as the doctor thinks. Shin-ai stares at the young man seriously and warns that she will follow orders to get to headquarters, but demands that he does not meddle with her sister. Protagonist is not intimidated and asks if it isn't Shin-ai herself who is meddling in the younger one's affairs. The doctor retorts immediately, stating firmly that she is the only family left to protect the girl. Anna approaches silently and holds her older sister's arm with a pleading look to calm the situation. The young woman states with conviction that she is capable of carrying out the mission and asks for one single opportunity to prove her worth. Shin-ai stares into the younger one's shining eyes, feeling quite torn between her duty to protect and her sister's desire. The young man proposes a mutual concession agreement between the two, making the doctor let out a long sigh and give in to the pressure. She accepts on the condition that the promise is kept while the monsters continue to block the bridge just ahead. Suddenly, a throwing knife hits precisely the forehead of one of the zombies standing guard at the crossing. The blade reveals having a small device attached to its handle that begins to emit a sharp and insistent sound. The loud noise draws the entire horde of undead away from the passage, opening a clear path for the fugitives. The mailman notices the genius of the plan, realizing that the girl was already calculating the extra weight of the sound generator on her knives. He praises her talent while Shinai explains proudly the AAA batteries were manufactured by the settlement itself. The doctor trembles with worry upon seeing the younger one advance, looking like a mother letting her child go out alone for the first time. Suddenly, the surgeon touches the mailman's shoulder, calling his attention in a very apprehensive and worried manner. He warns in a tense whisper for the young man to look back immediately, because something strange happening on the bridge. The protagonist turns his face with a serious and focused look upon realizing that they are no longer alone in that spot. Heavy footsteps of dark boots echo on the roof of one of the abandoned cars that were blocking the old structure. The group encounters the mysterious silhouette of a hooded man wielding a large blade under the bright sunlight. From above, it is possible to see the enormous tension of the moment, with the stranger blocking the rear of the entire escape team. The stranger begins to descend slowly from the vehicle's wreckage, keeping his eyes fixed on the travelers. The mailman observes the figure approaching threateningly, trying to decipher what his real intentions might be. The hooded figure reveals a frightening mask with a stitched smile while making a silenced gesture with his finger. Ho Chiel swallows hard and asks the mailman what they should do in the face of that bizarre and dangerous appearance. The protagonist analyzes the situation coldly and says that, for now, the stranger doesn't seem interested in causing trouble. He deduces that the masked man will likely just take advantage of the clear path that the team just opened. To make matters worse, several other hooded warriors appear right behind the leader, showing that it is an armed band. Shinai asks if it is safe to let them pass, and the boy explains that if they attack, the zombies will come upon everyone at once. The big problem, in fact, is knowing if this armed group will remain peaceful when they finally cross the bridge. The mailman decides that the best thing to do for now is to keep walking, and the team advances with firm and attentive steps. The hooded warriors also begin to move in absolute silence, following the trail opened by the protagonists. One of the mercenaries watches the entire movement from atop the bridge's metal structure, ensuring nothing gets out of control. Further ahead, Anna positions herself with a new blade in hand, ready to open the last part of the monster blockade. She throws the weapon with impeccable precision, making the blade fly at high speed toward the selected target. The attack hits perfectly, attracting the last zombies with the sound generated and clearing the end of the dangerous crossing. The younger one celebrates happily, notifying her travel companions that they finally managed to pass. She waves enthusiastically while Shinhai and the surgeon admit, impressed, that the girl did an excellent job. Anna runs smiling toward the protagonist and asks, all proud, if she really helped a lot this time. The young man displays a positive gesture of approval with his thumb, confirming that her plan worked perfectly well. The girl asks for more praise in a spoiled way, and the mailman agrees awkwardly, repeating that she did very well on the mission. A dark voice suddenly emerges behind the group, praising the agility and precise aim of the young shooter. The smiling masked man approaches, admitting that he had never seen blades with noise generators before. He comments with sarcasm that the girl carries quite fun and interesting toys in her leg holster. The stranger asks if she manufactured the items herself, and Anna confirms, scared, stepping back in front of him. The warrior extends his gloved hand audaciously and asks to examine one of those pieces of equipment up close. Just then, Shinai appears at high speed and delivers a warning defensive strike against the stranger to protect her sister. Shinai stares at the masked man with fury, ordering him to stay away from her beloved younger sister immediately. The villain mocks the situation, asking for calm, and asks if she usually uses force before even talking. The mailman interferes and says they are in a hurry, demanding that the group let them pass peacefully. The smiling masked man admits they received help thanks to the noise, but questions what he would gain from that. He states cynically that the simple fact of letting them live would be a fair enough payment. The mercenary approaches and says openly that his great kindness is not to kill them at that very moment. He demands they hand over Anna's special knives, claiming that he only hasn't hurt her yet because he finds her face pretty. Shinai asks irritably if she can shoot them, but the mailman forbids the use of firearms to avoid noise. The young man explains that gunshots would attract the zombies back and asks his companion to leave the situation to him. Indignant at the band's audacity, the mailman steps forward, warning that he doesn't know which settlement they are from. He warns that attacking a mailman on duty will bring serious consequences, but the villain reveals he is from Yeongdongpo. The protagonist is completely shocked by the revelation, as he immediately recognizes the weight of that name. He recalls that Yeongdongpo houses an extremely dangerous settlement that everyone has already heard of. The mailman remembers that this was precisely the address written on the mysterious delivery letter he is carrying. He realizes, apprehensive, that place of origin of the mercenaries is the famous and feared meat factory of the world. It is a base completely out of government control and has very different roots from other groups. They built their own wealth by producing valuable goods on the black market without depending on anyone. The base functions basically like an independent country, and the villain smiles to see that they still use that old nickname. The masked man claims that they stopped trading human meat a long time ago, despite the group's dark past. He insists that now he only wishes to talk peacefully, but the mailman knows that everything is just a farce. The young man says there is nothing friendly about that conversation and unmasks the false intention of peace of those men. He points to the top of the bridge, questioning the reason for having a warrior hidden. Watching his steps, discovered, the hidden soldier jumps immediately from the bridge's metal structure, falling with a thud to the ground. The mercenary advances at high speed against the protagonist, delivering a deadly and surprising attack. The mailman dodges by a narrow margin, noting that the opponent's reaction speed is indeed extremely impressive. The adversary delivers a fast sequence of blows, but the protagonist manages to block the onslaught in time. The attacker smiles sadistically, stating that the mailman seems to be the type of person ideal for dialogue. The boy retorts, saying that the man has a very distorted and violent idea about what a conversation is. The leader states that agreements only happen between the strong, and that the weak are just robbed without the right to choose. The mailman's eye glows blue as he activates his system and evaluates the real chances of winning the combat. He is surprised to see that the probability of victory is only 59% against the man. The boy realizes that the enemy possesses hidden skills worthy of an elite hunter, and that he is hiding something. Knowing the danger, the protagonist decides he cannot risk the sisters' lives in such an uncertain bet. He looks at young Anna, who in silence perfectly expresses her desire for him to win that battle. He reflects that in the past, he used to run away alone, but now the weight of carrying his companions has changed everything. The young man always preferred absolute solitude to survive, but the presence of those three awakens something new in him. Determined, the mailman decides he no longer wants to run away or lose any of the people who are by his side. He puts his hand in his bag, leaving Shinhai and the others intrigued by what he plans to do next. The surgeon and the doctor are in shock to see the young man withdraw a dark blindfold from his belongings. The leader of the mercenaries displays an ironic smile, questioning what the mailman intends with that attitude. The protagonist ties the blindfold over his eyes, watching his chances of unarmed victory plummet to almost zero. Shinai yells desperately, asking what he is trying to do, and warns that that situation is no joke. He understands their reaction, but knows that fighting blind is actually the safest option because of his magic. Confident in his abilities, the young man concentrates to put into practice his final card against the band. Thanks to the power of his awakened core, he manages to totally invert the probabilities displayed by the system. However, the boy knows that this power consumes a lot of magical energy and charges an extremely high price. He laments that there are few stones left in the bag, but he needs to test this ability to ensure their safety. The protagonist concludes that he will not find a better opportunity than that to test the limits of his power. The opponent is enraged by the blindfolded mailman's audacity, thinking he is being underestimated in a ridiculous way. Taken by anger, the warrior advances with everything, yelling that there is a limit to how much you can underestimate someone. However, the mailman realizes in alert that something bizarre and totally unexpected is happening with the system. He questions himself, intrigued about the reason why the number with his chances of victory still hasn't changed. Suddenly, the impact of the mercenary's terrible blow hits the spot, causing a violent splintering in the air. The sisters and the hooded warriors close their eyes in the face of the glare caused by the violent clash of combat. The enemy's punch hits the protagonist's face square on, who remains standing, totally unshackable. The boy wipes the blood running from his cheek and thanks him ironically, leaving the opponent quite confused. He explains that he needed to take that blow so that all the battle variables would finally organize themselves. The mailman recalls an old, dangerous situation from the past, where pain was also essential for his victory. At that time, the boy needed to lick his own blood to activate his true combat capabilities. At that moment, the system's barrier shatters, and the value jumps to an incredible 99% accuracy. With a confident smile on his bloody face, the mailman realizes he finally understood how the gift works. The boy finds it strange that he manages to predict all of the enemy's attacks, even while being blindfolded. He concludes that, in fact, it is not sight that guides him, but his sharp instincts that command his body to dodge. The moment he throws his punch, the young man already knows exactly where the adversary's body will be positioned. The mercenary despairs, not understanding how the boy dodges everything with such agility, even without seeing a thing. He tries to decipher what bizarre trick the mailman used, and gets even more irritated upon analyzing the young man's face. The warrior yells enraged, asking why the protagonist seems to be having so much fun in that battle. The protagonist recalls when Dr. Myung questioned him about why he always acted with absolute coldness. He remembers that people always complained about his empty expression, without showing any type of real emotion. It was something extremely difficult to explain to others in a way that they could actually understand. The mailman confesses to himself that for a long time, he believed his eyes were just a curse. He recalls the day he saved desperate refugees who were begging for their lives in the face of a black monster. The boy jumped with agility, delivering a deadly attack against the beast to ensure people's safety. After the battle, the victims thanked him and asked where they should go after getting lost from the group in the forest. The system pointed out that staying there gave a 20% chance and escaping through the tunnel guaranteed 80% life. The boy pointed the way to the tunnel, reflecting that fate always forced him to make cruel choices in that world. The father carrying his son thanked him deeply for the mailman's precious help before running to the shelter. He watched them leave, remembering that he always opted for the alternative that presented the highest victory numbers. However, the big problem is that choosing the highest probability never guaranteed that, in fact, everyone would survive. The young man reflects, melancholic, that 80% chance also means that 1 in every 5 people dies. Probability does not distribute errors kindly, and sometimes bad luck hits people in violent succession. And on that tragic day, the deaths happened consecutively before his eyes by an unhappy irony. Bad luck struck a second time, and right after, a third, destroying the young survivor's hopes. On the 4th consecutive failure of probability, the mailman entered despair upon seeing that all the refugees died. He lamented seeing the failure of a route considered safe, assuming it would be easier if he didn't see numbers. After years witnessing this type of tragedy, the boy no longer had the strength to feel anger or blame anyone. Because of this, the mailman decided to live in isolation, turning off all his emotions completely. However, things changed, and now the young man no longer wants to just watch fate play with other people's lives. He clenches his fist with determination, assuming that now he will control probability with his own hands. Back to the fight, the boy dodges gracefully the fierce blows delivered by the mercenary from Yeongdongpo. He counters with a precise kick, destabilizing the warrior's defensive base, who lets out a moan of pain. The opponent widens his eyes in complete shock upon noticing the impossible precision of the boy who is blindfolded. The protagonist grabs the enemy's leg with extreme firmness, preparing to finish the combat once and for all. He throws the adversary violently against the bridge floor, feeling immense satisfaction upon performing the blow. The fallen warrior wonders in panic how the boy manages to move with such agility without seeing anything. The mailman reflects that changing the numbers did not alter his physical strength, nor did it turn him into a divine warrior. His opponent also continued with the same power level and didn't get any weaker after his magic was activated. The big difference is that now the world around starts tilt subtly to ensure the boy's victory. The system focuses on an old crack in the bridge's concrete that had been abandoned there for quite some time. At the exact time the mercenary steps on the crevice, the ground crumbles, making the villain lose his balance completely. With the collapse, the mercenary's balance shifts a few centimeters, and his attack completely loses its strength. A strong gust of wind starts to blow suddenly on the bridge, aiding the great change in probability. The metal structure trembles slightly with the impact, creating new crucial factors for the protagonist's victory. Even the flapping of a blue butterfly's wings subtly alters the flow of the wind, and the fate of that battle. An almost imperceptible vibration emerges under the warrior's feet, showing that every minimum detail there is important. Countless coincidences start to accumulate and collide with each other, like waves generated by a drop falling in still water. The world itself begins to open small cracks of luck that seem like mere passing chances to other people. However, the young mailman possesses the unique ability to see exactly where each little chance of luck flows. He predicts the outcome of the combat and advances, knowing that the final result of that dispute has already been totally decided. The protagonist delivers a powerful and accurate punch to the adversary, as he knows that the whole universe is on his side now. The warrior from Yeongdongpo is hit square on while the system confirms victory with almost absolute precision. The immense impact of the collision echoes violently through the old metal bridge, sealing the fate of that dispute once and for all. The dangerous opponent falls defeated to the ground and tries to understand how he was surpassed in such a humiliating way by a blind person. The mailman removes the blindfold from his eyes with total tranquility and stares at the opponent, who calls him a complete lunatic. The villain complains, saying the boy is the biggest psychopath he has ever met in his life for fighting in such an insane way there. Ignoring the insults, the boy asks directly if the mercenary also usually consumes any type of drug. The protagonist deduces brilliantly that the enemy possesses physical capabilities far above the human standard. He concludes that the opponent uses special combat stimulants to increase his strength and agility in the fight. The young man recalls that the army provided these dangerous substances, but he always avoided them due to the serious side effects. He realizes that the adversary was so drugged in the past that nowadays his body can barely process physical pain. The mailman stares at the opponent's red and tired eyes, knowing he has been suffering the consequences of the chemicals for years. Besides that, the boy notices that the enemy carries another very important secret hidden under his black cape. He pulls the hood and is faced with a high-tech armored suit manufactured to measure at the meat factory. The young man admires the suit's resistance, and the villain complains sarcastically about the intimacy with which he stares at his body. The warrior accepts defeat and promises that his band will retreat peacefully according to their initial agreement. The mailman warns that attacking a mailman on duty will bring serious consequences, but the villain reveals he is from Yeongdongpo. The attacker smiles sadistically, stating that the mailman seems to be the type of person ideal for dialogue. The boy thinks that headquarters will pay well for those armored suits, and that he needs to recover the cores spent on magic. He demands that all the mercenaries hand over their armored suits as a form of payment to let the band go. The masked leader enters despair and refuses the agreement, claiming that the mailman cheated in a dirty way in combat. The protagonist retorts calmly, remembering that the confrontation rules were established by their own band. He repeats the enemy's phrase, stating that whoever doesn't accept the agreement simply ends up being robbed in the end. Furious at the provocation, the leader draws his blade and advances, yelling that they are not the weak ones in that situation. The mailman just stares at the villain advancing, remaining totally calm and prepared to react to the imminent attack. Suddenly, a quick presence cuts the air, meddling in the combat even before the protagonist makes any move. The younger one, Anna, displays a shining and mysterious look, revealing she possesses a totally uncommon magical capacity there. She throws one of her special blades with impossible speed to contain the attack of the mercenary's leader. The projectile collides with extreme violence against the villain's weapon, causing a loud metallic sound and disarming him on the spot. The impact is so devastating that it throws the masked warrior far away, making him collide heavily against the ground. Seeing the leader fallen, the other mercenary whispers, indignant, that his own partner ended up defeating himself with stupidity. The soldier apologizes for the boss's attack and begs the mailman to overlook the foolishness so they can follow in peace. From afar, the other warriors observe the damage, thinking that the mailman himself delivered that mysterious and brutal blow. The protagonist shifts his gaze to the younger one, who pulls down her hood, revealing she finally understood the whole situation. Anna smiles affectionately and confesses in a low voice that the boy carries the same mysterious and magical nature as her. The mercenary keeps his word and hands over the 6 sets of armored suits demanded by the mailman for their release. However, when the band prepares to leave, the boy orders seriously that they wait one more moment there. The mailman grabs the arm of the warrior from young Dungpo firmly, demonstrating that he still wishes to resolve something. He takes a bottle of pills from the opponent's pocket, leaving the mercenary quite intrigued by that attitude. The boy warns that they are antihistamines and comments that the enemy's body must itch a lot because of the stimulants. The adversary stares at the protagonist with amazement, asking if he is a simple mailman or actually an elite doctor. The mercenary asks irritably if the mailman thinks he put poison in the medicine and guarantees he doesn't want to kill him. He questions the reason for the young man to hand over the bottle for free, and the protagonist proposes a new trade between them. The mailman explains that this time he doesn't want physical goods, but rather to obtain a very valuable piece of information from the band. The protagonist begins to inquire about the mysterious and dangerous settlement of Young Dongpo, from where the men came. He asks if it is true that their base usually accepts and carries out correspondence deliveries directly. The mercenary finds the question about letters strange, while the boy stares at the bloodied envelope addressed to someone named Tat. The mailman goes straight to the point and questions openly if the opponent knows anyone by that name in the settlement. The soldier is extremely startled and asks, scared, how the protagonist discovered the existence of that man. The boy notices that the mercenary's posture completely changed tone upon hearing the name of the mysterious recipient. To obtain more details, the mailman bluffs, saying there is correspondence for the man about to be discarded. The mercenary confesses, tense, that he cannot reveal anything about him, but accepts the medicine to relieve his chronic itching. He hands a bottle of rare liquor to the boy, explaining that he consumes it on nights when the side effects keep him from sleeping. The soldier states that the trade is finished and asks to end business right there in a peaceful and final manner. Protagonist puts the bottle away, concluding that the opponent's scared reaction proved the enormous importance of Tata at the base. He reflects, thoughtful, if he will really be able to fulfill Kang Yi's old request or if he is just wasting time there. Suddenly, young Anna approaches silently from behind and warns, shy, that she would like to ask him a question. The mailman turns with attention, and the girl asks for authorization to speak in secret right by the young man's ear there. She leans delicately toward the protagonist, asking permission to whisper something of extreme importance. The younger one asks in a very low tone if the boy is also a user of special abilities of the magical core. That was the big and mysterious doubt that the girl desperately wanted to clarify with the protagonist on the bridge. She recalls that former Captain Choi had already warned that mailman certainly was not an ordinary human. The girl thinks about the boy's feats and questions herself if he is, in fact, an awakened one or just an ordinary, very talented person. The protagonist stares at the young woman in silence, trying to understand the reason for so much sudden curiosity about his magic. Even hesitant, Anna decides she can trust her biggest secret to the boy and repeats the question very directly. She stares at the ground, apprehensive, knowing the enormous danger of revealing the possession of a magic core to anyone. The mailman stares at her seriously, remembering that talking about powers without being ready to pay the price is a terrible choice. From afar, Shiny Eye observes their closeness and murmurs in shock upon realizing that her sister is trusting the outsider. The scene cuts to a flashback from a long time before the younger one even knew of the young protagonist's existence. On that memorable night, the late Captain Choi revealed two extremely painful truths to the scared Anna. The first big revelation was that she urgently needed to find a way to escape the AAA base. The second and most impressive truth told by the leader would forever change the girl's perception of herself. He revealed seriously that the young woman actually carried the very rare gift of a high-level magic user. Desperate, the younger one begged the leader not to tell her older sister. Fearing Shinhai's violent reaction, the captain warned seriously that deserting without authorization was a serious crime, severely punished inside the military settlement. He explained with severity that if the command discovered her plan, she would be sent straight to the firing squad. Anna looks away very sad and asked for sincere apologies for having put everyone's safety at risk with the escape. The man praises the girl's preparation and asks, surprised, if she planned all that without Shinhai's knowledge. He points to a beautiful bouquet of blue roses in the office and questions what would be the real utility of those flowers there. The younger one explains, smiling, that she picked the flowers from the garden to gift her beloved brother. As soon as she reached headquarters, she reveals that she already knew about the illegal deliveries that occurred at the base, and that her sister also received correspondence. Anna states that, even without opening the envelopes, she was totally sure the letters were sent by her distant brother. The girl tells that every night Shinhai would wait for her to fall asleep to read the correspondence hidden in the room. She would spy on her sister sitting on the living room sofa, completely concentrated on reading those messages from her brother. Anna reports that the doctor would cry a lot, missing her brother, but still refused point blank to leave the AAA base. She understood that Shinhai remained there only to protect her and decided to run away first to free her sister from that burden. Choi questions realistically how a girl who has never stepped outside plans to cross that hostile world. He asks if she has ever faced any danger or eliminated any monster, and the young woman admits shyly that she never has. The captain ponders, surprised at the girl's enormous courage to try to carry out such a risky escape on her own. However, the leader admits that if the girl does, in fact, reach headquarters, a new and promising future will open up for the two sisters. He concludes melancholic that hope is a rare luxury and that for people like them, death is the same anywhere. He says the girl is different because she is a civilian and possesses a dear family to whom she wishes to return in the future. The man confesses that he understands her choice, but warns that his military duty prevents him from just ignoring desertion. The captain says he should report the case to the AAA command immediately, but decides to omit the official report instead. He states seriously that he will tell the whole truth only to the young woman's older sister. Anna despairs, begging on her knees for him not to tell anything, and says she prefers to be shot than to face her sister. The girl asks, crying for the captain to help her in some way, or to pretend he doesn't know anything about her plan. He argues that if he pretends insanity, she will try to run away again at the first chance, and she confirms she will. The young woman promises humbly that she will do any favor the captain might need in the future in exchange for the secret. The man is surprised by the proposal, remembering that her sister always said nothing in that cruel world came for free. The younger one insists she will pay the favor fairly, even without ever having tried to carry out something of that type before. The captain gives a comical rap on the girl's head, reprimanding her nonsense and fearing that Shinhai will rip his head off. He sighs and states with dignity that he became a soldier precisely with the mission of protecting defenseless civilians. Promises to help in the escape on the condition that she waits patiently for the ideal moment to act for real. The leader explains that getting her out of the AA military base and guiding her safely to the SEAL headquarters will be an enormous challenge. He guarantees with conviction that the perfect opportunity will arise soon, and time passes quickly at the base. And according to the words given by the captain, the great chance for escape finally arose with the mailman's arrival. The boy smiles, remembering that his true delivery mission doesn't involve letters, but rather the two sisters from the base. Anna recalls the moment she begged, holding the mailman's hands, to convince Shinhai to leave the military base. On the terrace, the younger one thanks the captain for having stopped her in the past, allowing her to depart along with her sister. She asks why he decided to help her, and he explains that in the outside world, we always question our existence. The man says he tries to give meaning to his actions, and that enduring pain is worth it if it is to protect someone loved. The girl questions, curious, if he would still help her even if she were just an ordinary stranger without ties. The captain reveals he already knew of her magical power since that day in the storage room and asks her not to worry. He tells that at headquarters, he learned that awakened ones forbid questions about magic because it reveals others' weaknesses. The leader advises the girl firmly never to reveal her power to anyone, not even to him if necessary. However, he adds with a gentle look that one day she will find someone special with whom she will be able to share everything, someone she doesn't mind revealing her weaknesses to, and who brings the same sense of safety as those flowers. The younger one reflects, melancholic, that in the end, her dear captain departed without ever discovering her magic. She walks amid the darkness of the forest, wondering if that decision from the past was, in fact, the correct choice. The girl stares at the night, thinking if things would have been different if she had revealed the whole truth to the leader. Back to the present, the mailman calls her, interrupting her deep thoughts and bringing the girl to reality. The boy asks gently if she wishes to say something, and Anna is startled to realize the companion's closeness. The younger one retreats, shy, and says she prefers to tell everything she is feeling on a better occasion further ahead. She runs off animated, promising that she will reveal the secret soon, leaving the mailman quite intrigued by the scene. The protagonist asks Shinai if she knows the reason for that strange behavior, and the doctor ignores him seriously. She replies coldly that she has no idea about anything and moves away, leaving the boy intrigued by her apparent anger. The boy is left confused, wondering the reason for everyone acting in such a bizarre way with him at that moment. He holds the bottle of liquor, concluding that those two sisters will certainly still bring many problems to him.